Recording in progress.
Welcome to the City Council Echo Chamber. Testing. Is that okay? Okay, well, first of all, thank you all for being here and for being patient. We are in a closed session, so we're getting a little bit of a late start. And I think we're on our way to getting sorted. Yes? Proceed?
Does anyone in the audience have like a Zoom call on their phone and open with audio? We need you to turn off audio if you do, because that is what causes the echoing in the chamber. Does anyone?
Okay. Well, while we're checking, feel free to get up and look at our art gallery from Toyonaka, take in the beautiful art that was gifted to us. Okay, so what should we do?
You know far too much about these things. Sorry for the delay. You can talk.
Okay, testing. We're good. Excellent. How's that for our technical assistance? Thank you, Martin. Okay, welcome to the City Council regular meeting this Monday evening, November 6th. I now call this meeting to order. I invite you all to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hedges.
Here.
Councilmember Lorraine.
Here.
Councilmember Newsom.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash.
Here.
Mayor Lee.
Here. We're excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to participate virtually. There were several ways to participate. For those attending in person, please complete a request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, please press star 6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for each specific item. Tonight, we are very excited to start with a ceremonial item celebrating our 60th anniversary of our sister city relationship with Toyonaka, and we have a presentation. Sure. Okay. 6 decades ago, visionary leaders from San Mateo and Toyonaka united in friendship, understanding, and cooperation, daring to dream of a world where borders would no longer divide us, but instead unite us in a shared spirit. And during October of this year, as mayor of the city of San Mateo, I joined a delegation from the city of San Mateo to commemorate the 60th anniversary of our sister city relationship with Toyonaka. The celebration encompassed formal events and, of course, the youth baseball exchange through the San Mateo Toyonaka Sister City Association in celebration of the first post-pandemic baseball exchange since August of 2019. At the heart of our sister city relationship lies the lasting connections made during the hundreds of homestays between our student ambassadors and baseball players. During this celebration, decades-long friendships were renewed and new bonds of friendships were formed. We collectively reaffirmed our commitment to strengthening the bonds between our communities and declaring our shared goal to continue to promote cultural and educational exchanges. Tonight, I am delighted to share we are joined by representatives from both our San Mateo Toyonaka Sister City Association and through our remote audience, representatives from the city of Toyonaka. Including my old friends, Fumihiro Hayashi, Koji Matakai, oh gosh. Koji Mataka Koshi, Takoyura Yamagazi, Yukiko Nakamura, and Yasunori Toyoda. Good to see you all. I must take a moment to first apologize for butchering your names. I'm so embarrassed. But thank you, and share our deep and sincere appreciation for the warm welcome and gracious hospitality and generosity from Toyonaka Mayor Osanai, City of Toyonaka staff, the coaches and players and the San Mateo Club, the homestay parents, and countless others who contributed to the success of this celebration. As a representation of the spirit of generosity of the Toyonaka people, we have on display in our council chambers tonight many of the gifts that were received during this celebration, including a remarkable artist rendering of the Kiyomizu Dera in Kyoto. And these gifts will be placed with pride at City Hall in commemoration of the significant milestone in our sister city relationship. Like any other relationship, it does require commitment and dedication and care. And tonight, I would like to extend my sincerest and deepest appreciation for the commitment, dedication, and care displayed by the members of our Sister City Association, including Treasurer George Musante, Former Sister City Association President Carolyn Chevelle. Head coach and director of the Sister City Association, Danny Harris. And president of the association, Gavin Owen. Their unwavering commitment and dedication ensured the success of the celebration and many other exchanges. Staff have prepared a brief video from the celebration, which we will share with you all now. I want to give a special appreciation to Martin, who spent hours over this weekend pouring over thousands of pictures and videos to put this together. There are many more pictures and images from our trip that didn't make it in, but this will give you a wonderful taste. That was truly captivating. Thank you. So we wanted to invite up Danny Harris. He is the head coach and director of the Sister City Association, and would love to welcome him to please share some thoughts and memories with us about his experience.
Konbanwa. Good evening. My name is Danny Harris, head coach of this year's San Mateo baseball team, past San Mateo Sister City president, and was 12 years old when my life changed forever when I made the team in 1990 and traveled to Toyonaka. On behalf of the 2023 team, their families, and the traveling party, I want to thank Mayor Lee and the entire San Mateo City Council and the hundreds, even thousands, that have supported and followed our journey since this team was selected back in February of this year. As you've mentioned by now, this exchange marked the 60th anniversary of our sister city relationship between San Mateo and Toyonaka, Japan. I can confidently report back that the bonds that were established between our cities in 1963 are stronger than ever, but will continue to take work, effort, and commitment so that someone like myself can stand before the City Council 60 years from now to celebrate the 120th anniversary. One way to establish that work, effort, and commitment is through our youth. This team, the 44th anniversary baseball exchange team, brought 10, 11, and 12-year-old boys together, earning their spot on the roster, not only because of their baseball skills. These boys went through an application and interview process. Our team was not going to just be the best baseball players, but also the best representatives of San Mateo. Before we left, the team went through monthly culture classes, learning important aspects about Japanese culture, significant Japanese phrases, and even the art of using chopsticks. Their families experienced the program as well. And when I say experienced, they worked tirelessly from February until we left on September 30th, raising the necessary funds so that their sons could have the trip of a lifetime. We told our team at the beginning of the tryout process back in February that this experience is more than just a baseball experience, and that you are more than just baseball players, that you are representing so much more than what earned you the right to put San Mateo on your jersey. Sure, we played 4 games and won 3 of them, but those games will be a distant memory. The memories that I hope remain are that of the journey to Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, and the lessons that come when relationships like this don't happen. The journey to Himeji Castle, Miyajima Island, and sleeping in a Japanese ryokan. The journey on a bullet train to meet people that they have never seen before, yet welcome them like they were long-lost family members. To Kyoto's bamboo forest and the Golden Pavilion, and quite possibly the most influential journey of this trip, the journey into a host family, to be their son for a week. To not share a common language, yet share tears upon our departure. Our team of 20 left San Francisco on September 30th as boys. On October 9th, they arrived back here as young men that we can all be proud of. Now, I would be remiss if there was not a call to action. While the next baseball exchange does not happen until 2025, when we welcome a team from Toyonaka, I would encourage everyone to seek out ways to get involved in this life-changing relationship. As I mentioned earlier, for someone like myself to be able to stand here 60 years from now celebrating 120 years of bonds of friendship, it's going to take work. On behalf of our team, their families, and the traveling party, I want to thank the City of San Mateo for their continued support and look forward to future ways we can share our wonderful city culture with our new and old friends in our second home, Toyonaka. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Now it brings me great joy to welcome from the City of Toyonaka, the Chief Clerk of Urban Brand Promotion Section, Yasunori Toyoda and Yukiko Nakamura. Would you like to say some remarks, please? Can you please unmute so we can hear you?
Hi, hello. Happy. Amor. Mr. Uehara, the director of our department, will have a speech. Okay? はい。
ただいまご紹介いただきました豊中市都市活力部長の上原でございます。市長の幼いが公務のため私からご挨拶させていただきます。
Thank you for the introduction. I am Uehara, Director of Department of Urban Revitalization of Toyonaka City. Mayor Osanai is on official business, so on behalf of Toyonaka City, I will give my greetings.
三松市長をはじめ、姉妹都市提携60周年事業に関わりました皆様、改めまして周年事業へのご参加、ご協力ありがとうございました。
Honorable the Mayor Lee, City of San Mateo, and everyone involved in 60th anniversary of our sister city appreciation. Once again, I would like to give my gratitude for your participation and cooperation in the anniversary project.
今回の周年事業は豊中市での開催となり、日本文化や豊中市での交流など多くの事業にご参加いただきました。特に少年野球の親善試合を通して市民の交流が深まったと考えております。
This year, 60th anniversary events were held in Toyonaka City, and all delegation members have taken part in many activities, such as Japanese cultural experiences and exchange programs. Especially, we believe our friendship of both cities was deepened through the goodwill baseball exchanges.
また、李市長におかれましては、豊中市の市政の視察として、雨水排水管の見学、災害対応、ゴミの施設処理の見学、学校事業体験など、市政運営に興味を持たれ、体験プログラムでは誰よりも積極的に参加しておられたことが印象に残っております。
In addition, Mayor Lee visited various facilities in Toyonaka, including a tour of crisis management section, underground rainwater storage pipes, and waste treatment and recycling facilities, and also local school. I was so impressed by the fact that Mayor Lee participated more actively than anyone else in the experiences programs we planned. And touching her approachable character, we have no doubt that she is the person who will lead the city of San Mateo as a great leader.
これは私の個人のアイデアではありますが、今回の李市長との面会の中で、市政の取り組みや体制にも違いがあり、学ばせていただき、大変刺激になりました。そこで今後は文化やスポーツ、交流だけではなく、両市の新しい事業や挑戦的な取り組みなどを報告し合えるような意見交換の場がオンラインで持つことができないかと考えております。
Through the meeting with Mayor Lee, I learned a lot of differences about municipal administration and systems too. So this is my own personal idea. I think it would be great to have a forum for exchange views, not only on culture and sports, but also on new projects and challenging initiatives in both cities. I believe that by using online as we do today, we can bring us closer.
サンマテオ市と豊中市の交流を今後も発展させていくことを記念いたしましてご挨拶とさせていただきます。
I wish you all the best for the future development of exchanges between San Mateo and Toyonaka. I would like to conclude my greetings. Thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to first of all show my appreciation in the most respectful way that I learned in Japan, which is to bow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're so indebted to you. So, Ohara-san and your team, I am profoundly changed by what I experienced and my family experienced thanks to your generosity and your warm welcome and to the relationship that has been nurtured over 60 years through the dedicated volunteer service of so many San Mateans and so many Toyonaka sisters and brothers. And as you mentioned, when the Toyonaka team asked what I wanted to do when I got there, I said, I want to see your infrastructure. And so I was given an insider view and able to walk 60 feet underground and see your stormwater holding capacity storage pipe and tour your clean land recycling plaza and go into your emergency prepared storage facility. And the exposure that I had to what Toyonaka is doing has really helped shape some of my priorities and my understanding of what is possible in the way of building resilient infrastructure. And what Toyonaka is doing is truly visionary. When Toyonaka, as an ancient culture that is thousands of years old, they are making plans and for hundreds of years. Their strategic planning and their investments in their infrastructure is looking at how to be resilient, not 20 years from now, 200 years from now. And that investment shows. And that's one of the key takeaways for me as I look to my council and the kind of leadership that we can aspire to is taking a long view of who we are and who we strive to be as a community. And so I wanted to say, because there's the work that goes into this, and then there's how do we continue the work. And I wanted to announce that one of the takeaways from this experience has helped me formulate what will become a future council priority for me, which we will discuss at our Blue Sky session, which is looking at how we can better integrate the program of the sister city relationship into our Parks and Rec department as a fully resourced program that can hold the partnership with our association and with our sister city sister city of Toyonaka, the municipal agency, as well as the San Mateo Club, and bring greater capacity to this program from San Mateo and our city of San Mateo, so that we will be ready 10 years from now to host the 70th anniversary. And I also wanted to just mention that next year, not next year, I meant tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to the Carey School, and the Carey School actually does an entire section on Toyonaka and the sister city relationship with Toyonaka, and so I will be presenting our visit to the Carey School and looking at the Carey School as a potential partner for future hosting opportunities, maybe for a school visit when our friends and students and baseball players come and visit San Mateo. So that is happening tomorrow. And then also, I did want to mention that our council has taken action on our Complete Streets Plan. And one of the things that, that we are doing is looking at how to plan in a very holistic way how our streets support multimodal transit, landscaping, stormwater management, looking at how our streets are part of a greater ecosystem. And one of the things that, that I made sure of was that we want to be looking at international best practices, like in Toyonaka, and how we can learn and learn from our, from our international community and bring those lessons here, bring those best practices here in how we design our streets. And so I think that there's a lot of takeaways, in terms of how, how this work will continue through our council actions, through the City of San Mateo's future support and programmatic support to the Sister City Association, and how this can help better shape our policy. And so I am profoundly grateful for the opportunity that, that I had to be mayor this year and to represent the city of San Mateo. And I felt so proud of our young people that stood alongside our in our delegation, weathering through some of the worst jet lag and very long speeches at times, and really showing up, showing great maturity and open-heartedness. And I know that our young people, you will one day grow up and become the next Danny Harris. You will one day grow up and be the next George Muslimfree. So you are the future of this program. And so it means a lot that you came tonight, and you are going to be the evangelist for our city to understand just how important this program is to peacekeeping, right? In a time where our world is being torn apart by war, it is these programs that restore peace. It is these programs that invest in peace. And so that is something I think that we should all be proud of as San Mateans. And I'm so, so grateful that, that you're here tonight, and that we had a chance to showcase the excellent work that the city is doing thanks to your efforts.
Through the mayor, I just wanted you to know that we will be posting the picture video with sound on the website, so people will have an opportunity to see that.
Thank you so much. I'm sure it was great as it was, and even better with sound. So, thank you so much to our friends in Toyonaka. It's wonderful to see you, and please, we hope to see you again soon, and keep in touch. Yes. So now we're going to take a photo with the group. Actually, if there's a way to put our Toyonaka friends on the big screen, then they can be in the back of the photo. Okay, great. Okay, photo op. Okay. All right, let's join us up at. Thank you so much. I think we got the shot. Sayonara. So sweet. Okay. Yeah, this feels really good. Okay. We have another ceremonial item. So I would like to invite up our Chief of Police, Ed Barberini, to say some words and acknowledge one of our longtime and dedicated employees, Maya Nakamura. So, if you don't mind, should I read the proclamation first? Okay, thank you. So I have this beautiful proclamation here for Ms. Nakamura, and it reads, "The City of San Mateo Proclamation. Whereas Maya Nakamura has served as a dedicated public servant for the City of San Mateo for 50 years. Beginning her career at the San Mateo Police Department in 1973, working as a record specialist, secretary, administrative assistant, and executive administrative assistant. And whereas Maya has worked under 5 different police chiefs, including J.L. Laverne Kapok? Okay. I'm on a roll tonight. Don Phillips, John Stagel, Susan Mannheimer, and most recently, Chief Barberini. And whereas over the course of her 50 years of service, Maya has taken an innumerable amount of meeting minutes and answered an unfathomable number of telephone calls, all the while managing to remain calmly focused on providing excellent customer service. And whereas Maya has performed a variety of duties during her tenure as a record specialist, she worked the midnight shift and performed matron duty for our jail and would assist officers in escorting female arrestees to court. And whereas over the years, Maya has adapted to a myriad of changes in technologies, including helping transition the police department from typewriters to computers. And whereas Maya has been a huge supporter of the Police Activities League since its inception at the police department. Whereas Maya has provided technical assistance to police officers and most every police department employee during her tenure. Many employees attribute some of their success to her assistance in improving their writing skills. And whereas if every person Maya encountered and assisted during her 50-year tenure were stood hand in hand, the line of people would likely span the globe. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Amron Sleeve of the City of San Mateo, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize Maya Nakamura for the manner in which she continues to perform her duties during her 5 decades of service, for the consideration she shows to her fellow employees, and for the care and regard she demonstrates to members of the public. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Maya tonight. For those of you who know Maya, Maya is a very modest and humble individual. She works very, very hard to make the police department run smoothly. She works just as hard to avoid any type of recognition or limelight. So I am humbled and honored to receive this proclamation on her behalf tonight. Maya is truly the cornerstone of the police department. She is the rock that we all lean on. She provides the stability that we all need. I love Maya, and Maya is loved by literally generations of police officers and law enforcement staff who have walked the halls of not only this police department, but the police department before that. So we are very, very grateful that we were able to take the time to recognize Maya and her half-century worth of full-time service to the city of San Mateo. I don't know that that will ever be matched. So this is a significant night, although I know I'm in big, big trouble with Maya tomorrow morning. Thank you very much for taking the time, and I'm hoping that I can ask Maya to come on down and take a quick picture and show her how much we appreciate her.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. Deputy City Clerk, would you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure, Madam Mayor. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 3, City Council meeting minutes approval. Item number 4, on-call Public Works Plan Review Services agreements. Item number 5, Office of Traffic Safety, Appropriation and Grant Spending Plan. Item number 6, Peninsula Clean Energy Solar and Storage on Public Buildings Program, Customer Participation Agreement. Item number 7, Wastewater Treatment Plant Transfer Pumps Improvement Project Agreement. Item number 8, Dale Avenue Pumping Station Upgrade, Contingency Amendment. Item number 9, Citywide Street Reconstruction Phase 3 Amendment. Item number 10, Construction Special Inspection Services for Clean Water Program Amendment. Item number 11, Integrated Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System Evaluation and Improvement Change Order. Item number 12, 375 Second Avenue Lease Agreement. Item number 13, On-Call Public Works Engineering Support Services Agreements. Item number 14, San Mateo Safety Management Association Memorandum of Understanding Amendment. Item number 15, Service Employees International Union Library Per Diem Unit Memorandum of Understanding Changes. Item number 16, Service Employees International Union Library Merit Unit Memorandum of Understanding Changes. Item number 17, Park and Recreation Commission Appointment Subcommittee Youth Commissioner Recommendations. Item number 18, Fallen Heroes Memorial at Central Park Appropriation and Spending Plan.
Thank you. Are there any members of the council who would wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none. Are any members of the public who wish to comment on any consent calendar items? Now would be the time to make your comment. This is for consent calendar items only, please.
Through the mayor, I have no in-person public commenters. And right now on the Zoom call, if you want to comment on consent calendar, please raise your hand now. Madam Mayor, we have no public comment on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Are our youth commissioners available for swearing in?
After we take.
Okay, great. Okay, is there a motion from the council to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
Okay, I heard Councilmember Hedges moved and a second from Councilmember Newsom. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hedges,
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom,
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash,
Yes.
Mayor Lee.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we have public comment.
Do you want to go ahead and swear in our youth
Oh, yes, I
commissioners?
absolutely would. Okay, thank you.
I invite down to the lectern our two new youth commissioners. Please come on down. Face me. To take the oath of office, I'm going to have you raise your right hand. I'm going to say a phrase, and you'll repeat after me. And after the first one is I, and then you state your full name, okay? And we're going to do it together, okay? Are you ready? Please raise your right hand.
I,
Serene Lee,
I, Thomas Joniker,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that
I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and
the Constitution of the State of California,
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will
well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
So while they are signing on the dotted line, I wanted to acknowledge that all of us are bearing witness to history in the making right now. This is the first time that the city of San Mateo has ever welcomed dedicated youth commissioners to our Parks and Rec Commission. This is a long-standing council priority that I've been carrying alongside literally hundreds of young people that inspired this decision and this action to ensure that there are young voices at the table of decision-making in our local level policymaking. That is what this group of young people and this new generation of leadership represents, is the voices of our young people having agency and having representation and a direct channel to council priorities and community initiatives. This is a truly a tremendous moment in history, and this was a very competitive application process. We had very tough decisions to make, and I think that we made the right choice in selecting these two exceptional young people. And I know this is a little bit out of unkosher, but I would like to ask council to please join in another photo with our new council members, with our new commission members. Okay, thank you. That was really special. I'm glad we were all witness to that. Okay, next is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the City Council at this time. State law prevents the council from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to council's discretion and can be extended if council wishes to do so. If needed, an opportunity for additional public comment may also be provided later in the agenda. And one more note, we welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised that this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item. And if speaking during general public comment, they must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended.
Thank you. Through the mayor, we have had a request for an organized presentation under public comment for items not on the agenda. So we're going to honor that as it's part of our guidelines for 15 minutes. The rules are that that organized presentation is in lieu of other members of the same organization also speaking. It's meant to be a little bit more of a, well, an organized presentation. So, but in addition to that, there is quite a few representatives. This is on small cell facilities here, and I have gotten additional individual speaker requests. So I want to get council's direction, first of all, on do we want to have the individual speakers on the same item? And just to point out, if everybody with the Don't Sell Out San Mateo t-shirts on, if you wanted to stand for a moment so the council could see how many of you are here. So thank you so much. That's helpful for them to know how many the organized presentation is representing. So what is council's direction on that?
So according to our guidelines, if you're there to speak on an item that is already being presented on in lieu of individual comments, then the presentation speaks for the group, and so it would be capped at 15 minutes. That is according to the guideline. Okay.
So I'm going to call up our organized presenters. It is Andrew Campanelli, who has joined us online, and then Irina Mavridis, Kelly Ryerson, and Yuang Tang are going to be our speakers. Please go ahead, Mr. Campanelli.
Good evening. Thank you for entertaining me. My name is Andrew Campanelli. I've been an attorney practicing for a little over 30 years, and for most of that time, I've been handling cases involving the regulation of wireless facilities, especially under the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Local governments call upon me to enlist my assistance to help them write wireless ordinances which give them the maximum power to control the placement of wireless facilities within their jurisdiction. I was particularly interested in this statement by the mayor that she was looking at Toyonaka to look at how they engage in smart planning with regard to their roads. Well, that's precisely what local governments come to me for. Contrary to what you may have heard otherwise, when Congress adopted the Telecommunications Act back in 1996, Congress considered giving the FCC the power to control where all these wireless facilities go. But at the end of the day, they did the opposite. The first thing Congress did was adopted provision 332C7A, which is entitled General Authority, and which preserved to state and local governments the general authority to regulate the placement, installation, and maintenance of wireless facilities. Since 1996, well-informed local governments have used that power to enact smart planning provisions which are designed to achieve three objectives. First, to enable carriers to saturate local towns, counties, and villages with wireless coverage, while number two, minimizing the number of facilities you need to provide that coverage, and number three, avoid to the greatest extent possible any unnecessary adverse impacts due to the irresponsible placement of wireless facilities. For most local governments, the problem they face with the 5G rollout, which is currently going on across the United States, is that they fail to enact ordinances which either A, take hold of the power preserved to them by Congress to the greatest extent it's available to them, or number two, provide guidance to their local boards who are deciding wireless applications, which generally ends up stripping them their power to regulate wireless facilities. What I'm seeing in the 5G rollout is that site developers, not carriers, but site developers, meaning companies like Crown Castle, Extenet, American Tower, Vertex, they're rolling into local neighborhoods and seeking to install wireless facilities as close as every 150 feet. This is not necessarily just for wireless coverage. I don't know if anybody's seen television lately with the T-Mobile commercials where the guy comes out singing that he's got wireless internet from T-Mobile. Well, that's precisely what the wireless industry is moving towards. They're looking to replace all of your hardwired services. They want to provide your internet, streaming service, and everything else through their wireless. And to do that, they need to install quite a proliferation of wireless facilities in residential neighborhoods, and I'm seeing that all over the country. If you want to place yourself in a position to stop that from happening and have the power to decide where and when these facilities go in, you'd have to draft a better ordinance than what you have. Now, I've seen in your code, Chapter 1710, which appears to apply to facilities in public rights of way. I've looked at handouts from the planning division, which I don't really understand, because it seems to suggest that wireless companies can pretty much put them anywhere they want, claiming status as a public utility. I respectfully submit that, unfortunately, your Chapter 1710 really does little more than create the illusion that you have power. The reality is, given the lack of properly drafted wireless ordinances for the city of San Mateo, if a sophisticated site developer came into San Mateo and wanted to install wireless facilities anywhere they wanted, they'd be able to do so because of fatal gaps in your local zoning provisions. And quite frankly, in many jurisdictions, they do that. Now, it hasn't come to pass yet in San Mateo, perhaps because it's my understanding that you've already entered some type of agreement with Crown Castle, which gives them authority to install a certain number of facilities, most likely on your existing utility poles and public rights of way. But it probably won't be long until somebody comes in looking to install them in the residential neighborhoods and in much closer proximity to each other than what you're accustomed to. So I respectfully submit that the city of San Mateo would be well advised to consider drafting or enacting a more comprehensive ordinance, which actually provides guidance to your local board. If and to the extent you have a board which is going to decide these wireless permits, even under Section 1710, giving them what you give them, you're basically throwing them to the wolves. And what I mean by that is this. The vast majority of times local governments deny an application and get sued in federal court, it's because the local ordinance doesn't provide procedural guidance to your local zoning board. What they're unaware of is that in subdivision 332C7B, the Telecommunications Act imposes certain procedural requirements on any local board deciding a personal wireless facility application. And the reason most local governments get sued if they deny an application is because the board didn't comply with the federal procedural requirements. The problem is, you cannot expect your local board to comply with procedural requirements when they don't know what they are. And your local ordinance, to the extent you have them, don't provide any guidance. No procedural guidance for your board. It doesn't provide evidentiary standards. It does not guide them as to what types of factual determinations they're required to make. These deficiencies render the city of San Mateo pretty much powerless to regulate any installation for a wireless facility. I assure you, given what you have, any site developer, sophisticated site developer, if they choose to do so, will be able to come into San Mateo and put these things pretty much anywhere they want. And if you try to stop them, they'll sue you in federal court and they'll win because of the gaps in your ordinances. So this is coming from 30 years' experience. I've been handling and litigating cell tower cases for 30 years. I've been drafting local ordinances for governments for the past 2 decades. And starting in 2020, I no longer just draft amendments, I draft comprehensive ordinances for each individual jurisdiction on a case-by-case basis, taking into account their existing code, state law, their population density, their topography, their aesthetic resources, and everything appropriate to consider, including, of course, but not limited to, the law of the Ninth Circuit, in this case, which is where you're situated. Because of the law in the Ninth Circuit, the burden is greatest upon cities in California to enact codes which vest their local representative boards with the proper authority to conduct the proper fact-finding determinations they need to make if they want to be able to deny an application for a specific installation, and to do so in a manner which does not violate the Telecommunications Act of 1996 or the procedural requirements that it imposes upon local governments. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. If anybody has any questions from the board, I'm available. I'm going to give you my office phone number, 516-746-1600, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have about anything I've said to you this evening. I appreciate the time to speak before you, and I wish you a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I actually was a youth commissioner myself 30 years ago, so it was fun to see this happening now. I am highly interested in protecting the city from the financial liability that is currently being transferred from the telecom companies to the city of San Mateo. By forming joint ventures with telecom companies and installing numerous small cell facilities in residential neighborhoods, you are putting the city at considerable financial risk. Once a small cell facility is attached to a city utility pole, according to the doctrine of fixtures, a melding takes place, and a plaintiff's counsel will allege, as is consistent with the law, that the melded unit as a whole is public property under our government code, suit that can be brought for dangerous condition of public property. These public utility poles are demonstrably dangerous with the meaning of Government Code 835 because the radiation they emit has been scientifically shown to be carcinogenic. This risk of carcinogenicity is most dramatically proven in a $25 million study released in 2016 from the NIH showing that cellular radiation causes malignant cancer cell glioma, which is what causes the deadly brain cancer, glioblastoma. In 2017, in the failed state of California Senate Bill 649, the firefighters exemption was a unique development in public record. It was an admission of the dangerous nature of the about-to-be-built small cell system because firehouses were exempted from having these towers near them due to health concerns. I can tell you that once these towers are installed, people are going to start getting migraines, tinnitus, dizziness, and cancer. There are going to be cancer pockets around them, and you will be sued. You will be responsible for it. In fact, Crown Castle admits in their own annual report that if a connection between radio frequency emissions and possible negative health effects were established, our operations, costs, or revenues may materially and adversely be affected. We currently do not maintain any significant insurance with respect to these matters. Therefore, the liability for cellular microwave exposure injuries shifts from the telecom industry to the city government. The significant health liability will fall on you. The city. My guess is that the telecom consultants have not told you that part. This can easily be addressed by listening to what Campanelli just presented tonight and changing the ordinance.
Hello, I have been here. So I'm a new mom. I'm doing everything to protect my boy. So I believe that's why so many people are here today, to protect their family and to protect their house value. We all know how expensive like housing are here. 20% drop the value is significant. Not mention that thing, the awareness thing is potentially harmful for our beloved ones. So I bought my house 1 year ago for my new baby to prepare for that. Then I was happy, but a couple of months ago that forever changed. So a small cell facility has been proposed to right next to my bedroom, my nursery room, 16 feet high, right next to my story house. At that level, second floor level, the radiation level is 50 times higher than on the ground. But there's no mayor on the second level. Does that mean I never open my window again? So I can never host a birthday party for my kids in the front yard? Then why am I having this house? Then on my street, there are so many young children. It's like tens of them. They're running on the streets and are exposed to radiation every single day. Is that appropriate? So there are so many of them are deeply affected by this. They are like the proposed installation of almost 300 already, and the AT&T, I believe they just joined this. So imagine there will be one street, but could be two proposed wireless facilities on the same street. So there could be 500 of them across San Mateo. Like for each of them, 10 households will be impacted. So that's 5,000 households, 10,000 people, 10% of San Mateo population. So only a small part of us are here. We will not give up. We will continue this topic until the city will make a change to change the ordinance, to tighten it up, to protect us. And the city council members, you have the power, as Andrew has informed you, and we really deeply ask you to make that change. And my last comment is for the people who are supportive of 5G, I respect your opinion and what you want, but you can definitely encourage those people to ask installation of small cell facility in front of their own house. So by that way, you can get to the 5G you need. So I just think it's not right if you want 5G, but you ask it to be installed in front of other people's house, just right in front of their house, literally. Thank you.
So we're asking for two things tonight. One, please support the appeals and deny the operational permit for any wireless facilities transmitting at 28,000 megahertz because the application is not compliant with current federal regulations since FCC Order 19126 was remanded back to the FCC, and the FCC has not completed its court-mandated work from the ruling. It doesn't matter if it was an administrative review, the ruling stands. We just saw such cute, sweet little kids today. In 60 years, I want them to be here. I want them to be celebrating, and I want them to be tumor-free, cancer-free. We don't need to see an uptick in all of these horrible diseases that absolutely are linked to this. And the second thing we're asking for is change the current city code to allow these facilities only in commercial and industrial zones, a minimum of 1,500 feet from any residence. My favorite quote is, wireless facilities are a necessary evil. However, you do want to regulate them to minimize the adverse impacts of these facilities, much like a sewage treatment facility. Just because you need one doesn't mean you put it anywhere. The city needs to exercise its power to the full extent preserved by Congress, as Campanelli just explained to you. A future draft of the city code must take hold of this power preserved to us by federal law. We are asking you to please allow Campanelli to help you get a new zoning ordinance done. This is what he does for a living. He said he charges $8,000 for it. If we need to crowdfund it, we'll do it. If the city can pay for it, that's great. If we can all do it together, we want this done. This is not something we take lightly. There's 11,000 pages of documents, peer-reviewed scientific data that show that this is just not safe. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
This is the end of the organized presentation from the cell tower. There are two other speaker slips. I don't believe they were cell tower. They were not marked as cell tower. So Sandra Diller and Henry, are you speaking on cell tower? Yes. Then thank you very much. You're covered. All right. And I have no hands raised, so we are at the end of public comment.
Thank you so much. So as was said before, state law prevents the council from taking any action on this matter. I know that our council cares very deeply about ensuring that we are building a healthy future for all of our residents here today and generations to come. And so I wanted to give our city manager an opportunity to talk about some next steps.
Good evening, Mayor Lee, members of the council, Alex Kojic, City Manager. Good evening, community members as well. Acknowledging that we have heard a lot of feedback from the community on the cell tower issue, I wanted to provide just kind of where the city is at, specifically on this topic and area. So the city recently adopted its wireless communications facilities in the public right-of-way. I believe it was in 2021. The city is preempted from regulating various aspects of wireless communication facilities, sitting under both state and federal law, citing both under state and federal law. And on the other hand, we can and do regulate the placement, construction, and modification of wireless facilities, but must comply with strict deadlines to act on wireless permit applications. So in order to explore this issue further, we have agendized this specific topic that was discussed this evening for the December 13th Sustainability and Infrastructure Committee, where we're flying in experts to really talk about the topic and discuss the topic, and also train our Sustainability and Infrastructure Committee on how to approach and hear appeals on this topic, but then also receive public comment and actually address the public comment as well, so that we can all be informed and educated and also engage at the same time, and take that as the first next step based off of acknowledging what we're hearing from the community on this specific topic at hand. So that's the next step in this process proposed by the city.
Thank you so much to our city manager for arranging some next steps in this process. Councilmember Hedges, some comments?
Are questions allowed?
No. Okay. Okay. Do we have any other public comment?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will close the public comment period for items not on the agenda. And we will move on to our public hearing. Item 19, Bay Meadows Phase 2 Development Agreement Extension Request Ordinance and Introduction. I believe we have our senior planner, Rendell Bustos, and our contract planner, Lisa Costa Sanders here. No? Okay, then we just have Rendell Bustos. Welcome, Rendell.
Thank you, Mayor Lee and members of the City Council. My name is Rendell Bustos, Senior Planner in the Community Development Department, providing the staff presentation for item 19, the Bay Meadows Phase 2 Development Agreement Extension Requests. The project developer is also present this evening and will be providing some brief remarks following staff's presentation.
Sure. So we'll just give it a little minute to transition.
I hear all your hard work.
I was struggling to hear you, and I'm only 8 feet away. So
It's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Always good.
Are we good?
Yes,
Okay.
let's proceed. Thank you so much.
Okay, so just a brief overview of the items that we'll cover in the presentation. It's a brief presentation. We'll just start with an overview of the Bay Meadows Phase 2 development, followed by an overview of the extension request, public comments, and concluding with staff's recommendation. So a background on the development itself. So the Bay Meadows Phase 2 development redeveloped the former Bay Meadows racetrack and is a mixed-use development that consists of a range of uses, residential uses, office uses, public parks, and retail uses. The project was approved by the City Council originally in 2005. One of the main controls of the development is a development agreement, or DA, which is an agreement with the city and the owner that vests the owner's development rights for a period of 18 years in exchange for a range of public benefits, including public parks and financial contributions above city requirements. So this is an aerial of the development, as well as some examples of the finished construction. At completion, the development would include a total of 1,048 residential units and 1.2 million square feet of office uses. So as was shown in the previous images, the development is substantially complete with the exception of two final mixed-use blocks, or MU blocks. The DA is set to expire on December 20th of this year. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic impacts and the consequential economic impacts, the owner is requesting a 3-year extension of the DA to complete construction of the final 2 blocks. There are no additional changes requested in this extension request or to the approved MU blocks. The applicant will also still be responsible for payment of a series of in lieu fees, impact fees, and building permit fees. So those impact fees include transportation impact fees, wastewater treatment plant fees, and those together approximate to about $1.8 million for both blocks, plus sewer connection fees, and those would be paid prior to permit issuance. Lastly, an amendment of the DA does require City Council approval, and prior to tonight's hearing, staff brought this item to the Planning Commission last month, who recommended City Council approval by a vote of 5-0. So really quickly on public input, staff provided public notice through postcards, placards, and a posting in the Daily Journal. We've received one public comment that was submitted prior to the Planning Commission meeting last month, and that was regarding the development's homeowners association and the status of the vacant 2 blocks. And so staff provided that comment to the owner for response regarding the HOA, and the vacant lots are subject to conditions of approval for ongoing upkeep of the lots. So to conclude, staff is recommending that the City Council introduce an ordinance to approve a 3-year extension of the Bay Meadows Phase 2 development agreement. So this concludes staff's presentation, and I think through the mayor, the developer is present this evening and will be making some brief remarks.
Wonderful. Welcome, please.
Madam Mayor, council people, thank you for considering this matter tonight. My name is Janice Thatcher. I am with Wilson Meany. We're the developers of Bay Meadows. We've had a long and great relationship with the city of San Mateo, which we value very much. We're here tonight to request a 3-year extension of the development agreement to allow us to complete the final 2 blocks at Bay Meadows. We were a little sidelined by the pandemic. We appreciate the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation for approval, and we're here tonight to answer any questions and to thank you for your consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, this is where we ask any questions. Does anyone want to start? Any questions from council? No? Okay, we can open it up for public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. That was premature. We do have one question.
Sorry, I was pouring water. Just to confirm, an MU2 and an MU3 do not include any residential? So is this all housing and office, or housing, office and retail rather?
Through the mayor, the mixed-use block 3, MU3 does include 67 residential units, and the remainder being office uses and retail uses. So those would be unchanged from the approved plans.
And just out of curiosity, how many office and retail units do we have in the remaining 2 blocks?
So 67 units between the 2 blocks, and I believe it's a range of either 300,000 or 350,000 square feet of office uses, again, between those 2 blocks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's open it up to public comment.
I have no in-person public commenters. If you'd like to comment on this item on Zoom, please raise your hand. Madam Mayor, we have no public comment.
Okay, excellent. Council, we've been asked to introduce an ordinance to approve a 3-year extension, Bay Meadows Phase 2. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Hedges.
Yes, I think this is the right thing to do to observe the recommendations of the staff and the Planning Commission. We all know how things slowed down during the pandemic, and it would be the right thing to do under this development agreement to allow the developer to continue with this project past the original time.
Was that a motion?
That is a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you so much. Moving on to old business. Item number 20, wet weather preparations update. We have our Deputy Director of Public Works, Matt Fabry, to present an update. Welcome, Matt.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Matt Fabry, Deputy Public Works Director. I'm here to provide an update on where we are in terms of wet weather preparations. This is a follow-up from discussions we had in August and September when we provided an overview of what happened with the New Year's Eve storm and the subsequent winter storms, as well as council's action to appropriate $3 million worth of funding to help us with some of these preparations. So this is just an informational update only, but general city council feedback is obviously welcome. Just a quick reminder that when it rains, everyone in San Mateo relies on our stormwater system, which includes all of our underground piping, 130 miles of it. We've got 6,000 catch basins. I think last time I talked to you, I said 5,800, but since we've been out cleaning them, we've actually identified new catch basins that we didn't have on our maps. So I say we're closer to 6,000 now. We do have 20 miles of open creeks and drainage channels that includes both public and private segments. We do have our main flood control lagoon, which is the Marina Lagoon, as well as 10 essential pump stations that pump water from some of these watersheds out into the bay and different locations within our watersheds. And just this is a reminder to everyone that everyone lives in a watershed, and we have 7 major watersheds within the city, and 2/3 of the city does actually drain to the Marina Lagoon, so that's a critical facility for us. So I encourage people to understand and know what watershed they're in, where their water goes when it rains. So when I presented to you back in August and September, we had these tables of different actions. If you recall, some of these actions we said that we were going to do no matter what, and some of the items we presented, we said we could do them if we had additional resources. So I'm going to present sort of the same tables that we looked at previously and give an update on where we are on those. And I did want to say that the written agenda report includes a summary of all of these items. I'm just going to hit on some of the ones that I think are more important or worth providing an update on. But if you have interest in any of these, there is written updates on all these items. So the ones highlighted in red boxes on here are the ones that I'll talk a little bit more. So this is the list of items that we were going to do no matter what, that we didn't need more funding for. So one of those is that we did commit to getting a public-facing dashboard up on the city's website that details what the water levels are at the Marina Lagoon, as well as what the status is on the pumps running at the lagoon, so that folks can be able to look on the website and know what the water levels are, know how many pumps are running, so that they've got some level of assurance and what's happening and some of the issues that we had on New Year's Eve. So this is a screenshot from the beta version that we've been working on with our IT department. You can see the top chart shows the lagoon levels, and so you can see on a regular basis with the tidal water coming in, the water rises, and then the pumps pump it down. And the far right of that, where you can see it drop down more significantly, is when we just on November 1st reduced the lagoon level by a foot to start moving towards our winter levels in the lagoon. The bottom chart shows the number of pumps that are running. So typically during the summer times when the tides bring the water up, we have one pump turn on, pump it down, pump turns off, and so that's typically our operations. I think when we had 2 pumps running there on one day, we were doing some testing out there. So we hope to have this finalized. There's just a few more bugs that we're working out, and we hope to have this up on our website, and I think I confidently say that we can have this up by December 1st, if not sooner. One of the other items that we talked about, and this combines both an item that we said we didn't need money for as well as one that we did need money for, is that we do have a draft RFP that's undergoing updating and editing internally that would be both for updating our storm drain master plan as well as doing new LIDAR data analysis for the city that would give us updated surface elevations as well as elevations of within our creeks and channels as well as within the lagoon. So council authorized giving some resources to help us with the LiDAR piece. We said that we could do an RFP for the storm drain master plan. At the time that I talked to you in August, we weren't certain about getting started on the storm drain master plan, mostly because of timing and staff resources and sequencing. Since that time, we have identified that there is actually $650,000 that council has already allocated that will allow us to get started on the storm drain master plan. So that's what our plan is right now, is to combine both the LiDAR work with the storm drain master plan update, given that the work that's going to happen in the storm drain master plan is going to rely on the LiDAR information. So it made sense to us to combine those and have the consultant that's going to be doing the storm drain master plan update to manage getting the LiDAR data as well. So we hope to have that RFP finalized within the next few weeks and out on the street. We are working diligently on getting our 10 storm pump stations all cleaned and ready for the wet season. This is a picture of our Hillsdale storm pump station. This is actually 30 feet under the ground, so it's not a simple thing for our staff to get in and clean these things out. This one actually requires a confined space entry where we have to have ventilation and air monitoring and all those things to go down in there. But we do go in and clean all these. We have 2 left to be done that are scheduled for this week and next week, I believe. In addition to getting all of these storm stations cleaned, we do make sure that all the pumps are ready to go. We do have quarterly preventive maintenance on all of those stations where we do go out and check, make sure all the pumps are working. We're making sure that all the stations are fueled up for any stations that have backup generators that need fuel. Our Marina Lagoon pump station, those pumps are driven by diesel engines, and so we actually have an underground tank out there that we're making sure is fueled up, ready to go. So we're trying to make sure that all the systems are checked out and ready to go for the upcoming rains. We did talk about making sure that we are prepared in terms of potential proactive work on closing roads. So we do have a picture on the left of all those water walls. Those water walls are already staged at 42nd Avenue, where we did have the undercrossing closed there when it flooded on New Year's Eve. So we have water walls proactively stationed there that we can quickly deploy if we end up having any problems there. You can see the supplies in our courtyard in the upper right picture, and then the lower right picture is a trailer that we're already preparing that has signs and cones on it that can be easily deployed from the courtyard as we need it to be taken to any other locations. In terms of our outreach, education, and engagement that we would, indicated that we'd continue doing, we have been continuing to do print and electronic mailers, especially related to our community storm and flood protection initiative, as well as social media postings. We did have the rain barrel rebate program where folks that purchased rain barrels came and picked them up at our courtyard, I believe, last Saturday. We do have our Adopt a Drain program that we continue to advertise, and we do continue to recommend that folks sign up with SMC Alert and Nixle, which are the 2 systems that you will be notified on if there is an emergency. SMC Alert is the one that's used countywide, and Nixle is what is used by our police department. So we do recommend signing up for both of those, and we do continue to update our web pages related to flood preparations and stormwater, and so those URLs are shown there on the screen. We recommend people visit those for additional details. So now I'll move into the items that we previously had asked council for resources for. These were the immediate term actions that we felt were most essential. So I'll go through each of these. The first one was doing all the maintenance on the diesel engines and upgrading our wiring, programming, and alarms at the Marina Lagoon pump stations. And second one was deploying, we said we could deploy up to 5 sandbag stations throughout the city. I'll talk about that, as well as inspecting and cleaning all of our catch basins. So looking at each of those sequentially, this is showing our Marina Lagoon pump station, the 2 staff there are standing above the trash racks that are outside of the wet well where the pumps pull the water out. So that's part of what we do is clean those trash racks in advance. We do have problems with barnacles growing on those, so it's a little bit more complicated than just removing trash and debris. The picture on the right shows new safety anchors that we've installed on the building that will allow our staff to be tethered in when they're cleaning those trash racks, as you can imagine, standing over those, and sometimes we have to open the gates that the staff are standing on to be able to get debris out of there. If you're doing that in the middle of a rainstorm, it's not the safest environments. We want to make sure our staff are protected when they're doing that. The picture on the left here shows the diesel engines. So a big chunk of the money that we asked council for was to get Cummins, the engine manufacturer, out to do maintenance work on each of these engines. Part of the problem we had on New Year's Eve is that we had engine failures that did not allow the pumps to run. So far we have one of the engines has been maintained. The second one is being done this week. The third one is scheduled for next week. And then we have 2 more scheduled for December. Unfortunately, some of the supply chain issues that are plaguing the entire economy are causing problems with getting some of the fuel injection pieces for these pumps or for these engines, excuse me. So we're going to have to watch very closely the forecast and see whether or not we can get those ones done in December. If we start to get into heavy rains, then we may actually have to postpone those. And I do want to emphasize that the engines continue to be able to run. This is not critical maintenance in terms of these engines can't function without the maintenance, but it is maintenance that is recommended and we wanted to get done prior to the rainy season. So we will do our best to get all of that done as quickly as we can, but if we do get into heavy rains, we will have to probably postpone those last 2 until later. The picture on the right is the work that we're doing on wiring and updating for our getting alarms, making sure that all of the alarms come from the engines and get into our system, and then those get called out to our SCADA system. So those are pictures of some of the new wiring and components that are being installed to make sure that all of that is functional. Sandbag stations, we did end up deploying 4 sandbag stations as opposed to our normal 2, so those show the 4 locations. Those are up and available as of a couple weeks ago. So we have one at the Anchor Road lot that is right near the Bay Trail. We've got one at the Parkside Aquatic Park parking lot, one at our Corporation Yard, and one at the Beresford Park parking lot. We also have sand stockpiled at our Corporation Yard so that we are prepared in case we get into a situation where we did last winter where we were competing with other agencies trying to get sandbag and sand. So we do have a proactive stockpile here that we can pull from at the Corp Yard if we need to. Catch basin cleaning, our crews have been out diligently cleaning catch basins. I will say that it has been a greater effort than we anticipated in terms of the work it's taking to get these done. And we've been challenged with some of our staffing shortages in terms of getting it done as quickly as we would like to. The map there on the left shows all the catch basins that have been cleaned to date. So we have pretty much done everything east of 101, and our crews are now moving between 101 and El Camino. We were also working on getting contractor support to do stuff that was west of El Camino. Unfortunately, we've had a hard time getting contractors that have indicated that they're available to do this work or that can do it for a reasonable cost. So we're still trying to get contractor support on board, but have not yet gotten contractors that we could work with on that. So we'll continue working with our crews as you know, continue working with crews throughout, and we may end up having to do all of this with our crews if we can't get contractors on board. So these are sort of the short and midterm actions that I lumped together. So the last 2, 8 and 9, were ones that we had not originally asked council for funding for. 4, 5, 6, and 7 were ones that we had asked for resources for. And so I had already talked about 7 and 8, where we do have the RFP put together. And so I do think that with the funding that council allocated, focused on the LiDAR work as well as the money that had already been approved that we could use for the stormwater master plan update, that we can get a good start on those. It may not, I think it is likely not enough to completely do the stormwater master plan update, so we may have to look at an additional budget appropriation for that in the future, but that will definitely get us going for the near term. And so we are committed to getting an RFP drafted this month on item 4, which is the localized lagoon maintenance dredging that we have authority to do under our existing permit. That will be work that will likely have to happen next year during the dry season. So we'll work on getting an RFP together for design work on that so we can get a design package together that we can put out to bid. So we're going to get started on that. And then items 5 and 6 are items that we have not taken any action on yet at this time, although we did have a meeting with Verkada today to hear more about their monitoring systems and whatnot. So in terms of camera monitoring under item 6, we are having ongoing discussions with Verkada, which is our city adopted standard now for cameras. So We are having discussions about that, but we haven't made any progress in terms of locations or installation. And then I wanted to give you just a brief update on where we are in terms of the money that was allocated. So I just put these tables together. I don't really want people to focus too much on the numbers, but council had authorized $3 million or appropriated $3 million total, and so $500,000 of that was focused on the Marina Lagoon. We took another $400,000 of that into our operating budgets for some of the operating pieces that I've talked about tonight, and then the other $2.1 million went into our capital account, and that would be going towards the items that would include items 4, 5, 6, and 7 down below. And so I just wanted to highlight that of the $500,000 for the Marina Lagoon, we've already contracted for $481,000 of that. Given that this has all happened within the last 6 weeks or so, we haven't gotten to the point where we're getting all the invoices and paying things out. So I can't show you that we've spent a ton of money, but we've contracted for it, and I expect that we will be spending a lot of that within the next 2 months in terms of getting invoices in. And then for the other operating part, the $400,000, that's going towards our staff time for doing the catch basin cleaning and some of that other work. And then the $2.1 million is going towards those other pieces that would include, the LiDAR survey, the localized lagoon dredging that would likely be next year. And then there's an additional $650,000 that's not included in this that I mentioned that can go towards the storm drain master plan. So I did also just want to mention a couple other things. We have continued to have discussions with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, One Shoreline, Town of Hillsborough about collaborative work on San Mateo Creek. We had a field visit on Friday that folks met out in the field at different locations at San Mateo Creek. I did want to, those pictures there are from the field visit on Friday. I also wanted to show the picture with the graph on it that shows the actual elevation of Crystal Springs Reservoir. So you can see I pulled out what the level was right before New Year's Eve last year and where it goes all the way until last week. And so you can see that the level at the reservoir is basically very close to where it was prior to New Year's Eve last year. So that's where SFPUC is planning to have the reservoir in terms of their management of the reservoir. So fortunately, we made it through all the storms last year with the reservoir getting within, I think, a foot or so of overtopping. So it was very close and nervous for us. So hopefully we won't have anything like that in the future. But part of the discussions with SFPUC is how can we proactively get additional monitoring data on the creek so that we have more visibility into what's happening, especially in the parts that are tidally influenced that prevents SFPUC from releasing more water than they would like to from the reservoir to keep the levels under control. And so I think part of what we talked about with cameras and the funding that council appropriated is that we may look at collaborating on additional monitoring gauges in San Mateo Creek that would give us more visibility into what's happening there. And then I just wanted to highlight, just for the community, additional safety tips, making sure that folks are preparing in advance. I urge you, if you have concerns about flooding on your property, get your sandbags now. Don't wait until it starts raining to do so. You can find the information on the sandbags and the stations that I showed at cityofsanmateo.org/sandbags. Make sure you're clearing your own gutters, checking your sump pumps on your own property. Please do sign up to adopt a drain and help keep the storm drains clear. Our staff is limited. We can't be everywhere at once, and so everything you can do to help keep our storm drains flowing is going to help things get where it needs to go. Definitely sign up with Nixle and SMC Alert. That's how we're going to notify folks if there's an emergency. And it's absolutely essential that if a roadway is flooded, do not drive through a flooded road. It is absolutely essential. And we've got additional information on our website at cityofsanmateo.org/floodprep. So with that, again, this is informational update only, but I'm happy to take any questions or general council feedback. That concludes my presentation.
I also wanted to say that we have staff members who are in the audience as well from our Office of Emergency Services, our Fire Department, Parks and Recreation, Police Department, and Public Works, if you have any further questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is the time for council to ask questions. Councilmember Hedges.
I thank you for a great report. Thanks for all the work you've been doing. Question is number 9. I wasn't convinced you had the funding to do that. One more.
Yeah, for number 9, we don't have funding for full-scale lagoon dredging, and we didn't ask for funding for, number 9 is sort of doing the design, environmental, and permitting for a full-scale lagoon dredge project.
But we do have money for the environmental.
We don't have money, we didn't ask for money for this, we don't have money allocated for this project at all. What we do have the ability to do as item 4 is that we do have permit authority to go in and do dredging at the creek mouths. We have the limited ability to do up to 2,000 cubic yards from the creek mouths, and so that's what part of that funding that council appropriated is going to help us to get that dredging done. So that will be sometime next year, we'll be able to go out and dredge the mouths of the creeks. I think if the storm initiative passes, then I think we'd have revenue that we could start definitely talking about getting work going on number 9, which would be to get design done on a full-scale dredging project, which, if you recall, the dredging assessment from 2018 said that a full-scale dredging would be more on the order of 275,000 cubic yards. So it's a much bigger design, environmental, and permitting project than what the small-scale dredging that we're already permitted for and have the environmental clearance to do. So most of the money for 4 is really focused on actually doing that small-scale dredging.
I would assume we should do the environmental study as soon as possible, so we'd be ready to go if that money comes through.
Yeah, I think getting going on the design, environmental, and permitting is absolutely the first step. I think the challenge is if the stormwater initiative doesn't pass, then we're stuck back in the position of how are we going to pay for a dredging project. So I think once we know, which we will come back to council in January with the results of the initiative, then if it passes, then I think it's a different conversation about getting started on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional questions from council? Councilmember Lorraine.
Thank you for the presentation. Through the mayor, I was just curious why wet weather might challenge the schedule of engine maintenance that you were describing. Is it that literally we want to make sure we have the pump online for the wet weather?
Yeah, we just would not want to get into a situation where we did not have all 5 pumps available, and so when they come out to do that maintenance, it takes about a week to do the full maintenance, and they have to take the engine offline, and so worst case scenario would be, because they're doing 1 engine a week, our worst situation is we would be at a point where we could only have 4 pumps available because one of them would be taken apart in terms of the engine. So that's just where we don't want to be, is to have potentially, something like New Year's Eve that happened that was not, well forecasted, and we were not expecting New Year's Eve, and to be in a position where we don't have all 5 pumps available. So that's what our concern is making sure we've got absolute maximum capacity.
Thank you. I don't think I have any other questions at this time.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through the mayor, and thank you, Deputy Director, and thanks to all your team. We have been seeing you out in the field, and it is so appreciated. So my first question is, as I recall when we spoke in August, that there was a commitment to come back on a quarterly basis to do just what's going on. It's essentially what you're doing now. Is that your understanding too?
That was my expectation. This was supposed to be the first one, I think. So, yeah.
Great. So you're ahead of schedule. Thank you very much. Number 2, in terms of the Office of Emergency Services near-term wet weather emergency action plan and the longer-term updated overall emergency action plan, what is the timing you're expecting that to come in on? Because those are obviously very important.
Well, we had a meeting, I think it was included in the weekly update that city manager provided, that we had a meeting last week that included staff from different departments as well as staff from Office of Emergency Services. They handed out to us at that meeting the small scale plan, that's sort of the wet weather plan. So we got the first draft of that last week. And so we're going to be going through that and reviewing and providing comments back and working with Office of Emergency Services to update that. They'll be taking feedback from all the different departments. So we have that plan now, and I think that the larger scale plan is something that's longer term in terms of working on a larger process to go through and developing that plan. But I know Jim is here tonight if you wanted more details on that, but we do have the small scale plan that's focused on the wet weather preparations as a draft already.
Okay, well, just a general time frame.
Jim, you want to come up? I believe the small mini plan I have, we as staff are looking at, I believe, a couple more weeks, right, Jim? Jim's coming up.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Yes, the plan on the plan is that we're writing a small version of an emergency operations plan right now, just so that we can address the winter needs, getting through any potential flooding that happens. And yeah, like Matt just said, that's something that we provided to city staff last week, and we're taking in feedback, and we're providing our own edits as well, so it's growing and developing from the draft stage to something that will be effective, and we expect that to be wrapped up and finalized within the next week or two, maybe 3.
Great, and then you start the longer plan.
The full-on emergency operations plan, which is a major document, is something that we'll have for the city in 2024.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Then, let's see, in terms of the timing of your collaboration with the SFPUC, and, we're going to have, heavy rains this winter too. What specifically do you think will be the case? Rather than we're talking with them, how are we assured that if the same thing happens this winter that happened last winter, we're going to be in a better position?
Well, I don't know that I can say anything definitive in terms of reservoir management. That's somewhat out of our hands, and SFPUC is making their own call in terms of how they manage the reservoir and what levels they manage at. We do know that their challenge, and the challenge they had last winter, was how much they can release. They have the capacity to release much more than they did release whenever it wasn't raining. They are limited by, from their own field observations, they are limited at the 101 overcrossing, that at high tide conditions, when the tide I think is over 9 feet, that they have problems releasing more than a certain amount, because then it starts to get to the point where it may flood the 101. And there's also, at least one property that's, down in the flood zone that if they release too much water, that home is flooded. And so there are limitations that they've identified in terms of what they feel comfortable releasing. So part of what would help everyone, I think, is to have more visibility in terms of what the creek flow is and stage level is at different locations in the creek. We've got limited monitoring. They do have one monitoring gauge that's at the base of the dam, so it's way up at the top of the watershed. And I think they maybe had something at the 101 interchange, but we've never had visibility into that data. It's not one that's put on the USGS's website. So, and then one shoreline installed a gauge, I think in the Deanza Park area on the creek. Unfortunately, they did not end up, something went wrong technically, and they didn't get any data for last winter. So we're looking initially at what can we do to provide better information in terms of what's happening real time in the creek. That would help us as well to have more certainty in terms of when we potentially are going to hit a capacity restriction within the system and worry about overtopping or flooding. But I think the longer term plan is to collaborate on sort of a watershed management approach in terms of how do we manage that watershed collaboratively, and that gets more complicated and involves all these different parties, including Hillsborough, and one shoreline would like to be a part of that and involved. So I think the conversations that we've had have been very positive, and that everyone wants to collaborate, and we've actually found out that there's a lot more potentially happening by different partners than we were all aware of. And so it has been helpful just to have these conversations to know what's going on. I think the fact that we have commitments through council's, action and commitment to resources is that, they've done this kind of work in other watersheds, and they said, you know, getting that LiDAR data is sort of the gold standard. And so if you guys have resources to get that data, at least within the city of San Mateo's boundaries, they'll probably look at whether they want to supplement that and see if they can add on to that within the upper reaches of the watershed that go beyond our city boundaries. So I think we're taking some of the key first steps that would go towards a collaborative watershed management plan in terms of getting the LiDAR data. I think that as part of what we want to do with the storm drain master plan is that we want to update our modeling. We haven't modeled San Mateo Creek since the late 90s, I think, and so we want to do updated modeling on that is a next step after we get the LiDAR data. So there's a lot of pieces that I think are already falling into place, which is great, that can lead to sort of this collaborative approach. What they've done in other watersheds is developed sort of interagency agreements to how do we work on this stuff and how do we collectively pay for it, and eventually we may get there if we decide that there are things that we want to jointly fund. But at this time, I think there's enough stuff happening by individual agencies that, and mostly a lot of that is coming from San Mateo, that we don't feel a strong need to jump on that as the first thing, that I think some of these other things would happen first. But in terms of the reservoir operations, we haven't really had a lot of ability to tell them how to manage the reservoir, and they've made it very clear on many occasions that that reservoir is a drinking water reservoir, and it's managed as a drinking water reservoir and not managed as a flood control facility. So that's the challenge that we face, and then the downstream restrictions limit how much they can release. So.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to continued updates on that.
Yeah.
Also, totally understand that doing the catchment cleaning east of 101 absolutely had to be the priority, and totally understanding that there's a manpower shortage. What's your best guess about west of 101? I mean, there's a big part of the city that...
Well, we're already moving west of 101, and the map I put in there is already a week or so out of date probably, and we've added more to that. So I think that we're going to continue pushing on. I think the question is, how far are we going to be able to get before it really starts raining? And then once it starts raining, it becomes a lot more challenging to do that work, because you don't want to go in and try to suck out a catch basin that's flowing with water, because you're just going to be sucking out water. And then to some extent, you get new debris and leaves and stuff that go into the catch basins that you've already cleaned out. So we're going to keep pushing at it. We've been putting in a lot of overtime hours. Our staff have been coming in on Saturdays to do the work, and in addition to crews doing work during the week. So we'll keep pushing at it, and we get as many crews out there as we can to do it, but we're limited in terms of getting our other responsibilities done at the same time with the same crews that have to do, our sanitary sewer maintenance and also mark our underground service alert, notices and things like that. So we'll keep going. If we can get contractors on board, that's our goal, is to get the contractors to start on the stuff that's west of El Camino and sort of work from the hills down. So assuming that we can get a contractor that has availability and can do it at not an astronomical price, then we'll get them on board ASAP and get them started right away.
Great. Well, please thank them for us. We appreciate it. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Did we get everyone? Or Councilmember Newsom?
Just want to thank you, Matt. The presentation was great. The only two minor feedbacks I had, and you may have already worked on this, but I just wanted to clarify, was the creek, Laurel Creek, after it comes under George Hall, comes around a bend, which is completely concrete. And I've heard from several neighbors that they're concerned that we haven't cleaned that out. Do we have the resources to remove the sand that's within the concrete lined corner of that bend?
We have the resources, but the problem is that we aren't legally allowed to do any of that without permits. And so I appreciate you bringing that up, because I did mean to mention that in my presentation and forgot. But we have submitted sort of emergency authorization requests to do 4 different locations that our staff have identified as important locations that we'd want to do that kind of work. I think the area that you mentioned is one of them. We've got the area on the 16th Avenue channel that's sort of upstream of Delaware that's completely full of vegetation. There's an area by the trash rack at Sarah High School, and then there's a 4th one that I can't remember now. But we're waiting on the regulatory agencies to give us the approval to do so, and once they give us the approval, we'll get out there as soon as we can and do that. So we have the resources. A lot of that work, we can do it we think in an environmentally friendly way where we're doing it from the top of the bank and reaching in. We're not getting equipment in the channels. The fourth one is right next to the courtyard, the channel that runs right next to the courtyard. So I think we can do it in ways that the regulatory agencies can be supportive of, but we're just waiting for them. If we get to the point eventually where we feel like we have to do this, it's absolutely an emergency, then we'll get out there and do it. And I think the regulatory agencies are used to folks doing that, but at this time we're trying to watch the weather and wait to see if we can get the official approvals before we go out and do that.
And just out of curiosity, who are the regulatory agencies? Can we help you apply pressure?
It's Army Corps of Engineers, it's Fish and Wildlife Service, it's the Regional Water Quality Control Board, I think are the ones that we have to deal with.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thanks again, Matt.
Yep, you bet.
You have more questions?
Yeah, I just have one. When we did the FEMA work, there were 7 agencies who we had to permit, and Fish and Wildlife controlled 2 after them. The Corps was one of them.
Yeah.
They didn't control Corps. Corps was one of those we had to get it from.
If you're close to the bay, sometimes you have to deal with the BCDC, but these ones are far enough away from the bay that I don't think we have to deal with them. So sometimes you have to do Fish and Wildlife, and sometimes you also have to do Fish and Game. So it could be that we're doing both of those. But I know our staff have submitted for all the different agency permits that we need to get. So
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
Appreciate it, Matt.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just one more quick question. I think in your presentation, you shared a new webpage for sandbags. And otherwise, I guess I just think it might be helpful to maybe give a quick reminder to everyone when we have, storms happening later this year. The flood prep page will have maybe the latest information. And if people see extra activity on their street, a clogged drain, something that they'd like to bring to the attention, should they be calling the Public Works main line? If we're not in an emergency situation in which we invoke an emergency center sort of situation, and
yeah, our normal process is that if it's a normal workday, then our Public Works line is the best number to call, and that's staffed, from 8 to 5. Our folks know who to call in terms of our on-call staff that are available and who's working. Once it gets after hours, then our Public Works line usually rolls over to the PD dispatch. They also know who our on-call Public Works staff are. So if it's not a critical massive storm event, then that's probably going to be the approach. So you can still call the Public Works number, it will automatically roll over to dispatch. Or you can call the non-emergency PD number after hours and they will dispatch our crews. If we get into a major significant storm event like we did multiple times last year, we may end up going into 24/7 hour operations for our folks. And when we did that the last time, we also put our phone line into 24/7 operations, and so we had staff, staffing that phone number 24/7. So we would likely do that again, and we will put out information. We'll work with the communications manager, Samantha Weigel, to make sure that we're putting that information out to the public, that this is the number that you can call, and this is how you can reach us if there's an issue. So.
And can you please just quickly remind us of the phone number?
650-522-7300.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. So one of the things that we stood up during the storm was a reporting mechanism. So it was an online form, and I thought that tool was very helpful, and wanted to make sure that that mechanism for reporting would be continued. And if there are ways to enhance it, I think that is also really beneficial. So maybe, we're tracking the number of reports that we're getting, that they're geo-tracked, and maybe also there's a public-facing report that can come out so that this street has been identified, right? So, that the public knows that it's on our radar, that we've received that information, that, it's being managed. I think that one of the things that causes a lot of anxiety is not knowing, did the message get through? Right? Was it received and is it actually being responded to? And so I think that there's probably enhancements that we could look at moving into El Nino season in terms of what information is presented to, the public in the event of an emergency and how we can better automate that.
Yeah, I will say that I think the tool, it was stood up very quickly by our IT department. I appreciate them doing that. It ended up not being as helpful for us on the back end because it had some challenges, mostly because we couldn't do some of the things you were saying. We couldn't somehow indicate that something had been, received and was being worked on. And then we also couldn't clear things off of that once they'd been submitted. And so I think we'll continue to talk with our IT folks about whether we can create something that works for that. It is a real challenge, but we recognize, we had a lot of folks that, complained that, we called 6 times and nobody ever came out. And so we want to make sure that we're tracking that stuff. Some of it is just the dynamics of what's the storm event, and when it gets to be a really intense event, like in a normal, event where it's manageable, calls come into our number, it gets automatically put into our computerized system, and our staff are responding to those requests through our computerized system, and they're logging the response to that and closing those out within our computerized system. And that's the way we would ideally do things. But when it gets to be a real intense event, that becomes a little bit less efficient. And so we end up with our staff doing things on paper out in the field, and that's where we start to lose some of that piece. We still don't, even with our computerized system, don't have a way of visibly showing the public that your call has been received and has been responded to and has been closed out. So somebody would have to call in and staff would have to say, yes, this has been closed out. So we're not 100% there yet. I hear exactly what you're saying and would like to get there too. And so I will continue working with folks to see if we can get something like that together. But the tool that we rolled out last winter had more challenges for us than the benefits in terms of us responding to it. I recognize that for the public, it may have had more benefits for them in terms of ease of reporting things. So we'll have to work through that.
Yeah, I think we're all aiming for a tool that's helpful on the front end and the back end, right?
Yeah.
And I guess this seems like an opportune moment to talk about our council priority of setting up a 311 app. That there are very real emergency response justifications for having leveraging technology that can make us more responsive in the event of an emergency. So I hope to see that moving forward.
We actually, the IT director and myself have been actually meeting and talking about a holistic plan, so we're putting together a work plan as we speak about the CRM system, customer relations management system, speaking to exactly the need for the city.
Yay. Okay, so I had a couple questions as well. I wanted to ask, so there are 2 areas that we've identified as equity community priority areas. One is North Shoreview and one is North Central. And I couldn't help but notice that North Shoreview and North Central did not have a sandbag location from an equity perspective, where we know that there's concentrated low-income folks with limited access to transit, with limited access to, limited language abilities. It seems to me like like something that we should be thinking about from an equity lens.
Yeah, we absolutely did think about that and scoured the map trying to find locations. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you're well aware, that we have one city park in North Central that would be the obvious place at the King Center to do something like that. But we also have the challenges with parking at the King Center and using that for resident parking overnight, and the fact that to do this we have to have places where we can take 3 to 4 parking spaces for 6 months to have this, and then you also have the ability for people to drive into these locations park, fill up sandbags and do all the stuff you need to do to get sandbags. So we didn't think that the King Center was a great location to do that. So we did look at other locations. We tried considering the courthouse. We talked about the National Guard facility. We talked about the schools. All of those would require getting interagency agreements that we'd have to bring to council. And part of our goal was to try to get these things deployed as quickly as possible so that they'd be available. I'm completely open if we can find a partner that is willing to have 24/7 access on their property for people to come and fill sandbag stations, which we also include putting, light bars at these locations and lighting to make sure that they're lit up. And so if we can find a partner that's willing to have those and we can deal with all those issues and get an agreement in place, then I think we have the capacity to support that and deploy that. So that's the challenge, but we definitely saw that gap on the map and realized it was a concern.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that. And so last year, I worked with Supervisor Corzo to distribute, I can't even remember how many sandbags. And we did so with a partnership with the College Park Elementary School location. And so I think there's clearly a precedent for a partnership and collaborative approach there. And so I certainly would like us to explore that as an option.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was getting full sandbags, and I think if we had the ability to get full sandbags, pallets of sandbags, we could definitely work on getting those delivered to a location like that. I think it's the challenge of deploying a station that's going to be, a pile of sand like the other stations that we have.
And so my next question is about forecasting. We talked about, it's great to see us moving forward with the LiDAR and, the better modeling. I think, one of the reasons why we were flat-footed is because our forecasting data fell short, way short, right? 4 inches, 5 inches short. And so I know that it's early right now, and a lot of us are, we can't expect a complete overhaul of the entire the entire wet weather monitoring system. But I guess there's a question for me in terms of, how are we evolving the way that we're interpreting the data that we're getting right now? Is there a way to be a little bit more sensitive to, predicted atmospheric rivers, and what we anticipate to be El Nino season. And so I guess I wonder how we're integrating the fact that our data is less and less reliable, and what does that mean in terms of our adaptive approaches?
We are somewhat reliant upon what we get from entities like the National Weather Service, and it's really their area of expertise to be able to predict these systems. I know that there have been significant upgrades to the systems that do the monitoring of the systems with the specific goal of being better able to predict these atmospheric rivers. So, whether that's all complete or not, I can't say. But I guess on our part, what we're trying to do is internally in Public Works, and we've extended this now to parks and other folks, is that we are meeting twice a week. We started this week. We're going to be meeting on Mondays and Thursdays, and there are a decent number of forecast tools that are available to us through the National Weather Service. So we're going to be looking at all of those in terms of, what are predicted amounts of precipitation, what's the timing of that, what's, wind speed predictions and things like that, so we can be thinking about down trees and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be meeting, Mondays and Thursdays to talk about what's going on and plan our approach so that we're prepared for weekends and prepared for if we have to potentially change our operations to 24/7 so that we can get our crews switched over to that approach. So that's what we're trying to do, is stay on top of all the information that's provided. I do feel like after New Year's Eve that we saw sort of a significant shift in what was coming out of the Weather Service in terms of their forecast information. And so I think they recognized that they had problems on that day as well. And so it seemed like they got more proactive in terms of providing information. And so I think that maybe there's better information, or at least more information coming out that's talking about that stuff, and so we'll be staying on top of everything that's available to us and looking at it at least, multiple times a week to make sure that we're trying to stay as prepared as we can.
Thank you. And then my last question is, it's slightly out of scope from the $3 million allocation that we, in the list of priorities for immediate and midterm actions. But I didn't want to let this lie that, there's a significant portion of the creeks that are privately owned, and the city's hands are tied, right? We don't have jurisdiction or control over those the creeks management upstream. And so, but I do feel like there are steps that the city can take in terms of engaging owners in those surrounding areas and making them aware of their responsibilities, and providing them greater support and referrals to resources so that they can learn how to manage the creek that is adjacent to their properties, because they and their neighbors rely on that management. And so while it's not our scope, and we definitely have not budgeted for it, I wonder where that education effort falls, because if we're doing everything we can and we're missing whole like miles of creek upstream that isn't getting resourced or managed, then then we're still going to fall short.
Yeah, it's a definite issue that we recognize. It's a challenging issue because even in segments where you may have a segment of privately owned and maintained creek, is that you may have a city roadway that goes right through that, and you've got a culvert that goes under the roadway that becomes ours. And often when you have, natural creek, hardened structure, natural creek, the hardened structure doesn't move and the other parts do. And so sometimes the hardened structures end up contributing to erosion problems. And so we've got issues that have been brought to our attention where our culverts may be causing erosion problems downstream, that these property owners recognize that, hey, we're responsible for this, but it's your culvert that's causing the problem. And so it's a complicated issue that we're going to have to really dive into to wrestle with. But I think our first part is making sure that we are confident of all of the different creek segments in terms of what is the ownership and maintenance responsibility. And so we do have some maps that have been put together in the past that folks have worked on that detail what we think is relevant for each of the different creek segments. But I think we need to do some vetting of that to make sure that we feel confident about it. Once we have something that we're confident about, then I think that we can start publishing some of that information out to the public to make sure that everybody knows what is public and what's private. And then we can, in the interim, I think in parallel, we can continue to work on providing better resources through our website in terms of what does it take to maintain a private creek segment, because private landowners are subject to the same permitting requirements that we are to do any work in the creek. And so it's a challenge, but I think we can provide more information on our website to help educate folks.
That's great to hear. And I guess my follow-up question would be then, is there, considering that this is a significant variable, is this something that we're scoping in the RFP for the master plan?
I think that's one of the things that we're talking about is, do we want to get out of the master plan something that's a definitive resource on what is the status of private and public creeks? So I think that's one of the things that's on my list that I've talked to our staff about, that I think that would be something that would be good to come out of the master plan. And so we're trying to put that in the different buckets with all the other things that we'd like to get out of the master plan.
Mayor, just to add on Mr. Fabry's comments, so 2 items. So this is the reason why one shoreline was actually realized, is to work on these complex issues where we have multiple owners dealing with multiple parts of a creek. And so that's something I know that we'll be working with the executive director, at least on San Mateo Creek specifically. Secondly, our neighbors to the north in Burlingame, they have actually a really good program. I learned this during my time in Redwood City regarding providing pamphlets, mailers every year right before the wet season or during the dry season, notifying, educating, and informing the property owners of the creek maintenance that needs to be completed prior to the wet weather season. Redwood City just adopted it because I had to do it right before I came here. They just mailed theirs out about a couple weeks ago, but we could probably do something similarly in the near future. But we have great examples with Burlingame and also Redwood City, specifically to your question.
So good to hear that they're doing it and we can learn from them. Okay, so those were my questions. Did you have another question?
I want to thank you for a very comprehensive.
Wait.
I want to thank you for a very comprehensive list of questions. Very good job on your part. Thank you very much.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
I mean, there's a lot of money in this. So, Matt, I just wanted to stress that I think Shoreview Park, where the community center is there, has plenty of space for sandbags.
At Shoreview Park?
Yeah, it's right off of Shoreview Street.
Yeah, I think
And that's an area where there was a lot of localized flooding.
Yeah, we can look at that again. I think when we looked at the map, it seemed like people would have, equidistant to get to Anchor Road. And I think the reality is that anybody generally that's getting sandbags is having to drive somewhere to get sandbags. And so it seemed like we had pretty good spread, but we're happy to look at that option again if council.
The night of the flooding, I was all over, so was this gentleman. And quite frankly, those areas were really heavy hit. And so Rand Street, Shoreview, those areas are really bad. So anything we could do to get sandbags in that area would be very much appreciated.
Okay, we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's open it up for a public comment.
We have one in-person commenter, Danielle Schwerka-Godicki. I thought I had it now.
You're going to have to train me.
So first, I just want to say thank you to Matt and to the Department of Public Works for all your efforts. The residents definitely see you guys out there every day, and we so appreciate it. I just wanted to make a comment about the LiDAR. So that is really important. It's the only way to really understand the depth and capacity in our creeks and in the lagoon, and that is something that Flood Free San Mateo would like to review. Regardless of the outcome of the ballot measure, and stay on top of, because we do believe, based on the 2018 Moffitt-Nichols study, that the lagoon has lost something like 60% of capacity. And I also just wanted to take a moment to remind the community to please vote. You should have gotten a ballot last week, and it's critical that you return it prior to December 17th and vote yes for stormwater infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And any other public comments? Nope. Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. And this was just an update. And would anyone like to say any additional things? Well, I think, I hope you hear from us, council, and then also a community, our very sincere gratitude for all that you're doing in the face of supply chain shortage, staffing shortage. We as a city, I think, can say with high confidence that we're doing everything that we can that's within our power leading up to this season to be as ready as possible. And I want to thank community for calling out the ballot measure and the opportunity that everyone will have to dedicate resources to long-term solutions and a stormwater infrastructure management plan and system that can actually protect our community for generations. So, thank you so much, Matt, and we will move on. How are we doing? Does anyone need a bio break? Okay, why don't we take 5 minutes?
Boom. Good job. A little.
Welcome back. Our next old business item, number 21, campaign finance voluntary expenditure limit and ordinance introduction. We have a presentation by Prasanna Rasaya, our city attorney.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I have a brief presentation following up on our last council meeting study session on September 5th. So these are the questions for council. If you can go to the next slide, please. Does the council agree with the proposed changes? Does the council wish to include an optional provision relating to the filing of campaign mailers? And finally, should the city no longer charge candidates for the cost of candidate statements? That is, should the city absorb that cost? Which, by the way, number 3 does not require an ordinance amendment. It's just direction to staff. Next slide. Okay, so for the voluntary expenditure limit, this is essentially the same as what was presented at the last meeting. It's purely voluntary. First, the candidate would indicate their intention to abide by a voluntary expenditure limit. In that process, the candidate would advise the city clerk prior to filing nomination papers whether they wish to opt into the so-called VEL. And then there's an opportunity to reverse course, to then decline if they choose after the close of nominations. And the reasoning for that is if they look around and they see that perhaps no one who they're competing against has agreed to the voluntary expenditure limit, maybe they don't want to do it either. It is their choice. The formula is based on council direction last time, $2.50 amount per resident in each district, which, as indicated in the staff report, there's a brief chart in there that shows the amount is roughly about $50,000 to $54,000 per district. It would be, according to the draft ordinance, adjusted by the Consumer Price Index every couple of years. And it does contain exceptions for things like filing fees, return contributions, legal expenses, and other specified items. Now, the benefits and the penalties are largely similar. The benefits are publicizing the fact that someone is opted into the voluntary expenditure limit through the city website, newsletter, and publication and newspaper of general circulation. And the penalty is the same, just publicizing by the same methods. It would not be prosecuted, it would not be a public offense, it would just be that publicizing. Next slide, please. And then for recalls and aggregation of contributions, so the amendments would clarify that contribution limits do not apply to recall elections. I've mentioned this to the council previously. The reason there is because a recall election is really similar to a ballot measure. It's a question, should an elected official be recalled or not? It is not who should replace that person. So that question, it's more like a ballot measure to which contribution limits can't be applied. So there are proposed amendments in the draft ordinance that would accomplish that. I'll also note that even though one could apply contribution limits to a race, an election to fill a vacated seat, and that a vacated seat could occur through a recall election, we don't have a separate election to fill a vacancy. That's done through action of the council or failing that by the mayor under the city charter, at least for now. And then for aggregated contributions, you'll recall that contributions from individuals and by organizations that individual controls or directs, those are aggregated, but we have two different contribution limits. So this simply clarifies that the $1,000 limit applies in that situation. And it would also apply to situations where you have an individual or group of people who direct or control more than one organization. The idea being that those contributions by two or more different organizations, those would all be aggregated. They're counted together. Next slide, please. So I think this is going to generate the most conversation tonight. This is something that was discussed at the last study session. It's completely optional language. I decided to just include draft language for council consideration, but the idea here is that it would require campaign mailers to be filed with the city, and these are tangible mailers. It's pieces of actual mail. It's not online communications, it's not social media posts. And there's an exception for member communications, meaning that mass mailings include over 200 substantially similar pieces of mail sent in a calendar month, but do not include form letters or other mail that's sent in response to an unsolicited request or other inquiry. So if you're part of a member organization and you say, send me your monthly newsletter, whatever it is, that kind of situation wouldn't be covered by this mass mailing. It's really a mass mailings to the public at large, which is the vast majority of mailings that you would see. And we can get into what substantially similar means if asked by the council. And then next slide, please. So then lastly, candidate filing costs. So this is something the city does not need to charge candidates. State law allows the city to charge, and I think cities frequently do ask candidates to pay their pro rata share of including a statement in the sample ballot. And that to date, this is what the city has done. The city does not have to do it. So I think it would, separate and apart from the ordinance, simply amount to council providing direction as part of the motion on whether to direct staff to absorb these costs, which I understand from the clerk's office amounts to about $3,500 per election cycle. Next slide. So we're back to the original slide. Is the council in agreement on the proposed changes, the campaign mailer question, and absorbing candidate costs? And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, City Attorney. Questions from council? Who would like to start? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just one question. What do other peninsula cities do in terms of charging for the candidate statement fees? Is this?
It's a common practice for most of the cities because we consolidate with the county. The county gives the estimate of the cost, and then when people are pulling their papers, we let them know the estimate of the cost, and when they come back to file the papers, they pay it as a deposit. And then a few months after the election, we received the bill from the county for the actual costs, and then we either, well, I think you got like a $3.24 rebate. You either refund the difference or you ask for more money. And it's not a lot of money, but it could be considered a barrier for somebody running as one more expense.
But most cities in the peninsula?
I can think of probably about 2 who do absorb the costs themselves.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from council? Councilmember Hedges.
Just, this isn't specifically on this. I was wondering what is now existent, the 15,000 limit on loaning yourself money. Is that in danger of falling under, and it already exists, under the Citizens United provision of campaign funding?
No, it doesn't. I mean, Citizens United is a U.S. Supreme Court case from not that long ago that dealt with a different situation, that dealt with primarily allowing corporations and labor unions to use their general treasury funds for independent expenditures in support of political candidates. So it's really unrelated to this provision. I think you might be thinking of an earlier Supreme Court case that says you can't prohibit people from spending their own money. That was a 70s era U.S. Supreme Court case called Buckley versus Vallejo. And this provision doesn't do that. A candidate can spend as much of their own money as they wish. This simply puts a cap on the amount of the outstanding balance of a loan that's, again, is outstanding at any one time. And, the idea is to make sure there's more transparency, because if you loan yourself, say, $100,000, and then you raise money perhaps after the election to pay off that debt, as a loan, then in effect you could be shielding from the public, who are your supporters, who are your donors. And, there's a similar provision in state law, putting a cap on the amount of an outstanding loan balance at any one time, but it has nothing to do with limiting the expenditure of money.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to number 2 for campaign mailings, or is it possible that an incumbent who does a quarterly or bi-yearly newsletter to their constituents, would that fall under a campaign mailer, or is it possible that communication, provided it doesn't say vote for me, would be then just considered a communication mail? Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense.
I think of like Assemblywoman Pappen does a quarterly mailer, and at some point I'm sure I'm going to get that quarterly mailer a month or two before she's running for re-election.
So the way the draft language is worded in the proposed ordinance is that, I'll just read it, it's one sentence. A copy of every mass mailing in support of or in opposition to a candidate or measure shall be sent to the city clerk within 1 day of being mailed. So I think that might answer your question.
And sorry, by within 1 day, it means within 1 day before or after?
I think it's intended to mean after. I mean, somebody could hand deliver it, somebody could drop it in the mail, but when it says within 1 day of being mailed, as in past tense, that would mean it's delivered to the clerk afterwards.
And you answered these questions for me already, but I'm going to say them again just for the purposes of clarifying to the council. None of these rules apply to any other forms of marketing yourself. So door hangers, flyers, email blast, text message, robocalls. We're only looking at direct mail.
You're only looking at, first of all, you're only looking at tangible items. You're not looking at most of the other things you just mentioned. And, door hanger is it's not a mailer. It's something you're just physically putting on somebody else's door.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. Let's open it up for public comment.
If you'd like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. I have no in-person public commenters. And we have no public comment.
Okay. So who would like to begin? Councilmember Hedges.
So I do agree pretty much with the proposed municipal code changes as shown in the draft ordinance, with some exceptions, which I'll go over. Does the council wish to include the optional provision requiring campaign mailers to be filed with the city? I don't think that's necessary. It actually smacks of oversight, and it's just more work for the city. So I think it's totally unnecessary and may actually be looked at as negative. Should the city no longer charge candidates for costs of candidate statements? That was actually something, I think, when we were talking about this previously, that the city clerk actually mentioned that we might be able to do that, which I was thankful that she came up with that. And so I think that's actually a great idea. And I think you want to go forward, there may be some other things I want to comment on.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Thank you, through the mayor. I would say to these questions, I personally agree with the proposed municipal code changes, for number one. For number two, I would be okay with trying it. I think we have an opportunity to review after this coming election, as council does after every election. The practices sort of within this general area. And so I think, the mayor raised some concerns, some interesting ideas. And in the admin report, I got the sense that the city of Berkeley has a similar ordinance that we could adopt that would be mainly complaint driven, and would hopefully not be an onerous burden on city clerk's office or other staff. So I don't see a huge issue with it personally, and would be fine to support it, and with the idea that if it ends up being worse than we thought, then we could forego it in future elections. Should the city no longer charge candidates? I think this is a good idea too, and I agree and would support it. Thank you.
For 1, yes. For 2, no. And for 3, yes. Say everything 3 times.
Absolutely. Number 1, I agree. Number 2, I think the optional provision requiring campaign mailers to be filed is an idea in search of a problem. It would waste staff time. It would only get a certain percentage of the communication, and it would be expensive. So I think there are lots of other things to focus on, and I agree that the city should no longer charge candidates for the cost of candidate statements.
Can you clarify, what is the expense?
Well, the fact that there's going to have to be staff that's setting up the database, managing it, if there's a problem, trying to answer the complaints. And in speaking with people in Berkeley who have this, they say, yeah, it's a complaint-based system, but we know there's a lot we're not catching. So it's a little bit, why are we doing this?
Can I ask our city clerk's office to comment on the administrative capacity and cost?
We are unable to do that because we don't have enough data. The information we were receiving from the other cities was very limited and imprecise. And so, we would just be guessing at this point in time. And it would be a complaint-driven process. So it would be similar to how we do our yard sign monitoring. That's complaint-driven. And that does take up quite a bit of time. I just have no way of making a correlation between something like this that we have no experience with, and we're not getting the data from the other cities that can point to the administrative burden.
Thank you.
Through the mayor, I, by trade, am a mailing and printing house. And when it comes to complaints, we actually maintain, and so does the U.S. Postal Service, a do not mail list. So if complaints were being issued to the city, it's entirely possible you can go back to the candidates and the printers and ask them to remove citizens from the list, and the Postal Service maintains that list for us as well.
I do understand that. I think the complaints we get are primarily from one candidate complaining about another. That's more what the signs are, too, although we do get some community input on that also.
Well, as someone who's been really trying to push campaign finance reform for 4 years, I have to say that I'm very disappointed that this council's majority doesn't consider misinformation and fighting misinformation and tracking misinformation to be a very serious issue, serious enough to address in our own campaign finance reform policy measures. Personally, in my experience, misinformation is one of the most toxic and most aggressive strategies that is undermining trust in government and democracy. And so for us to collectively opt out of the most basic idea of just trying to understand what information voters are being provided so that we can fulfill our obligation of educating voters and responding to voters and responding to misinformation. When this council is running ballot measures, endorsing ballot measures and initiatives, and there are organized misinformation campaigns that we have no systematic visibility to, I want you to remember this moment. I'm not done. So number one, I agree. Number two, I agree. Number three, I agree. I have to say I am very disappointed where we landed in our on our voluntary expenditure limit. To the point where I actually feel it is empty. The intent behind this effort was to try to level the playing field. We live in the richest county in the United States of America. We are ranked ninth, worst income gap in the country. We are dealing with very gross inequities and disparities across the socioeconomic demographics of this community, which seriously impairs community from being equitably represented. I feel that a voluntary expenditure limit cap at $50,000 in a district is a meaningless gesture, frankly. I'm very disappointed. You'd like to say something? Okay, do we have anything further?
I may, from what I've heard from the council is 3 council members essentially interested in moving forward with the proposed ordinance, except for what's marked as the optional language in the draft before the council. A member of the council could make a motion if they chose to do so.
I'll move forward with this ordinance with the exception of number 2.
I'll second.
And would that motion also include essentially directing staff to absorb the cost of candidate statements?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsom?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
I'm going to vote no because I don't think that we've done our job and gone far enough.
Okay, motion carries 4-1.
Okay, next item, new business. Building Security Code Ordinance Introduction. Looks like we have our Police Department Captain, Matt Lithine. Welcome, Matt.
Martin, are you sharing on Zoom?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Thank you for the time. Thank you. All right. That's better? Yep. All right. Honorable Mayor, City Council, good evening. My name is Matt Lathine. I'm a captain with the Police Department. Tonight I'm joined by Brendan Bartholomew, a sergeant with the Police Department. And we are coming before you today as we discuss two key proposed additions to the San Mateo City Municipal Code, specifically for the Building Security Code requirements. Okay. By way of background information, the Building Security Code is contained in Chapter 23, and alongside other content having to do with building, fire, and green-focused building provisions. It has existed, the Building Security Code, at least in some versions since 1981, and as you can imagine, it has periodically needed updates or additions to continue to serve our community. Now, the reason you have myself and Sergeant Bartholomew coming before you as representatives from the Police Department is that the Police Department participates in the city's Development Review Board, or DRB, and that is a working group made up of several city departments that review and approve new proposed developments in our city. It's done to ensure that the proposed developments align with city code requirements and best practices. And Sergeant Bartholomew is our resident expert and representative on the DRB. As part of the DRB process, there are often opportunities for improvement identified, and one recent example was an update to the city code that the council approved for security gates for parking garages. And for tonight, what we're looking to do is to take advantage and bring before you two other areas for adoption to the city code. Now, to start these code adoptions, if we go on to the next one. Yeah, all right. They would create requirements in two key areas for installing emergency access for public safety, as well as requiring the installation of security cameras in qualifying commercial and multifamily developments. It's important to note they would only apply to new and future developments and would not apply retroactively to already approved or existing projects. They would codify long-standing practice and where staff, through conditions of approval, have required these two items for years. Now, because we have an interest to transparently and proactively share these interests with the community, we recommend formally adopting them into code so that our community has the awareness of these requirements from the start. Additionally, there are certain projects that don't trigger the full planning of application process and staff review. So adopting these requirements into city code would make sure that equitably across new developments, these codes come into play.
The first section we're actually asking you to consider tonight would be adding 2354-025 to allow secured emergency responders access to secured buildings. So this would come in the way of a combo keypad on the door lock, or in a building where there was a proximity card reader, a keypad on that proximity card reader, or as advanced as using our police radios to trigger the door lock so that emergency responders can gain access to the front door of an individual tenant in multifamily buildings and in commercial buildings where we wouldn't have otherwise access if the doors to the building were locked. Again, this is a long-standing process that we apply through our conditions of approval process with the DRB. And we have run into some problems in the past where projects ask if we have a firm base to apply those conditions of approval, and that's why we're asking you to bring this forward tonight. Second area we're looking to ask you to recommend and approve would be 2354-035 for video surveillance systems. This again has been a practice for at least the last 5 years, where we ask projects who go through a formal planning application to install security cameras on the exterior perimeter of the building for when our crime prevention techniques fail. When we're looking at buildings, we have a way to move forward with an investigation. There's also some information that cameras do have some impact on preventing crime, and that helps meet our overall goals there. The language that we're proposing for you tonight would require that these projects install cameras that view the public access areas, and again, to increase the amount of equity that each project would have partake in contributing to the community safety, and to increase the transparency and provide some flexibility for projects coming into town when they're installing these kinds of systems. As a summary for the two additions that we're asking for tonight, for access systems to require installation of the systems, providing access for emergency responders to be able to respond to calls for service in those places, and then for security cameras to require the installation of security cameras viewing public areas where the public can access, with the goals of more equitably providing for the security of people in the city, increasing the transparency for projects coming into the town so they know what they're getting into when they're developing projects here in town. And then the language allows for projects to have the flexibility to design their own systems and meet the intent of the code as we've provided tonight. In partnership with CDD and planning, when they brought the security gate amendments forward earlier, we participated in a community outreach meeting in May of this year, where we provided a general overview of the code amendments, discussed our general security requirements. The comments from the public at the meeting, there was one comment of concern about the cost of installing cameras, and then whether they were truly effective in preventing crime. And there was also a comment in support of the increased transparency that bringing these two sections forward for you to consider tonight would provide to people. We haven't received, there were no comments received from the public prior to bringing this to you tonight after the agenda was published.
So finally, really the recommendation from Police Department staff is to introduce an ordinance to add the two new sections to Municipal Code Chapter 23.54, the Building Security Code, that would outline requirements under 23.54.025 for secured building access for emergency personnel, and 23.54.035 for video surveillance systems. That concludes our presentation, and we stand ready for any questions.
Thank you so much. Questions from council? Who would like to start? All right, staff doesn't like it when we don't ask them any questions.
How was your day?
So just to fill in the space, because we want to appreciate the effort that they put in, is it not true that this is more sort of about a cleanup effort of, synthesizing some disparate gaps and policies and bringing them together?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate way to describe it. Really, we've identified an opportunity for improvement, and we really would like to transparently and clearly codify it in code.
Okay, I asked a question. Thank you. We'll open it up to public comment.
I have no hands raised or any in-person public comments.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment. This is the time for deliberation. Councilmember Hedges.
I think the presentation has fulfilled everything I needed to know, and I'd like to make a motion if that's okay with the mayor.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Hedges?
Yes.
Councilmember Newsome?
Yes.
Councilmember Lorraine?
Yes.
Deputy Diaz-Mayor Nash? Deputy Mayor
Me too.
Diaz-Nash?
Yes.
And Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. It meant that it was a really great, thorough presentation. Okay, moving on to new business. Item number 23, Council Priority List Progress Report. Welcome to our management analyst, Denise Garcia.
Just getting situated. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Denise Garcia, Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, and I'm here tonight to present the City Council Priority List Progress Report. It was formerly known as the Mid-Cycle Review, but now we're naming it as the Progress Report. So the goal for this discussion is for City Council to review and discuss, if needed, the priorities and the updates to this current fiscal year City Council priority list. Before reviewing the updates that we have for you all, I'd like to share just a brief timeline of how the City Council priority list is arranged. So first it starts with our first step. It's a 3-step deliberation process. The first step is on February 11th of this year, where we had our Blue Sky workshop, where we had received public comment and the City Council had the opportunity to present their priorities or their proposed priorities for this current fiscal year. The second step of our process was on March 20th, when City Council received a draft priority list review. And at that time, staff included the resources and the intensity levels for the priorities to complete or achieve the outcome that the City Council is intended. On April 17th, the priority list was adopted by City Council, the final list, and on July 1st, the priority list commenced for this current fiscal year. And today I'm here to present the progress report of this priority list. All items listed on the priority list are on track for completion. However, there are a handful of initiatives that staff have not actively started working on as of now, but anticipate being on track later this next, not fiscal year, but this calendar year, so starting in 2024. There are a couple of priorities that are now complete, and there also are some that are, the next two slides I'll share the delayed and completed priorities that are highlighted in the next two slides. The priorities that will start in the second half of the fiscal year are listed here on this slide. 3 of the priorities out of the 4 that are listed have clear deliverables of how they're going to work through the priority, but the one that we're seeking a little bit more clarification on is priority number 4, which is to integrate master plans to increase efficiency and community impact. The way we've understood the priority is that we will synthesize long-term master plans across the different departments so that they work a little bit better together. And understanding that direction, staff anticipates that this will take longer than 1 year to complete, and it's currently listed under the 1-year time frame. And so we're asking that if this is the correct direction that we'll continue in, then we're proposing that we move this priority to the time frame under 2 to 5 years. Completion category. So we open after this presentation. I welcome you all to discuss and deliberate whether or not we either 1, need to ask for more clarification on this item, or 2, if we just move this priority to the 2 to 5 year completion category. And if there are any questions about any of the priorities listed, we have department heads here who can answer any of your questions. On this slide, I show the completed priorities. The first one is number 6, which was to create a racial equity community art project. We have on the slide some photos of the completed artwork. Yeah. The artist worked throughout the month of October, and on October 28th, many of you were there for the art unveiling, and so I can confidently say that today the mural is complete and people are able to walk, bike, and do other things on the mural and on the pedestrian wall. The second item is number 14, which is to adopt a retail cannabis ordinance. Staff did present during a study session the permit and policy options that were for consideration, but after deliberation, City Council agreed to defer this item to possibly 2025. So we're safe to remove both of these items from the priority list, and we can reconvene at 2025 if there's still an interest on retail commercial cannabis. So tonight, the recommendation on this item for City Council is to review and discuss the priorities and updates to the 2023 to 2024 City Council priority list. This concludes my presentation. So again, department heads are here in case you have any specific questions. And I've also included on the presentation at the end of the slides, I have screenshots of all the priorities and the updates in case you're interested in looking at one specifically. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions from council? Who would like to start? Councilmember Lorraine.
Thank you, through the mayor. Denise, thank you for your presentation. I was curious I apologize. I don't know. This feels like a question that might be more deliberative, but regarding your note about number 4 and considering moving it from 1 year to the 2 to 5 year completion, I guess I'm just curious to learn from maybe you and staff and or the council, how much of number 4 is being taken care of via the general plan update process currently?
That's a great question. I can defer that to Christina Horsberger, Zach, if he's here, or Alex.
So I would say that the general plan is the overarching document that covers a broad range of policy considerations for the city, but within that, it serves as an umbrella for a bunch of other plans that need to all speak together. And so if we're talking about integrating all the plans together, there's a whole bunch of other plans that all need to be updated to speak to one another. And so I think that once the general plan is finalized, there's going to be a bunch of other plans that we then need to update to make sure that they're all consistent. So we have parks master plans, we have the complete streets that we're working on, we have the rail corridor plan, we have the specific plan for downtown. We might have other, we do have other plans that we need to look at that are all going to be probably in need of update, and at the very least re-examining when the general plan is done and we know what that final product looks like. And so we're going to need to do some adjustments to make sure that everything is in alignment, and that's going to take a while to do. And these are all long-range plans. And so I think that when we're talking about our long-range planning efforts, it's always going to take longer than a year to do something like that. It takes a year just usually to do one amendment. And so to think that we're going to do all of these amendments within a year timeframe, I think we just probably didn't think that through where we threw that on the task list.
And I'll just add to that, if that's okay. These plans, like Christina was mentioning, they all have varying timeframes or lengths. So trying to get them all in alignment is going to be an ongoing challenge or an ongoing process. So just to reemphasize that, it would be difficult to complete this in 1 year since they have such varying timelines.
Thank you. And did you have other proposed changes to timelines on your slide, or was it just number 4?
It was just number 4.
Okay. I did have one other question about the bicycle master plan priority, because I noticed in the in our admin report under progress, it seemed to note progress on a couple of specific bike master plan projects, but the priority I feel is likely to involve at least a study session in which the city begins with council discussing how to fund the high and medium priority projects. So is it could there be a study session on that in 2024? Given that it's a 2 to 5 year project or something, not necessarily by end of fiscal year, but within next year?
If it's okay, Matt, do you have a response for if that's a possibility for your team?
Good evening, Matt Fabry, Deputy Director. The question is, could we have a study session on implementation of the bike master plan, where we are in terms of projects within 2024?
Well, that plus, I think, discussing, what might need to change, I guess, in terms of our current trajectory to complete all high and medium priority projects by 2030.
Yeah. I'd have to check with our staff. It seems reasonable to me that we could plan to have a study session to do that within 2024. So I would say that wouldn't be a concern from my perspective. I'll double check with staff. I think the big question is going to be how does implementation of those projects integrate with some of the other efforts that we're doing in terms of developing things out of the Complete Streets Master Plan that we're trying to finalize, as well as the North Central Complete Streets Plan, and how all those pieces work together. So I expect that within, the timeline of 2024 that we'd be able to come to the council and have a broader update on all of those pieces.
Excellent. Thank you. No further questions.
Questions from council? Anyone else?
Through the mayor. Two simple questions. One, Measure CC hasn't received any revenue as of yet. Is that accurate?
That came from our finance director, interim director, so yes.
Okay. And then the other one I noticed was that we have youth commissioners still opened, and I'm assuming that's because we're looking for other commissions to put youth commissioners on.
City clerk can speak to that.
Yes, we just, as you know, tonight seated our first youth commissioners, and so we wanted to get that established and through that, and now we'll turn to the next step, which was additional commissions. So, we devised the process, did the application plan, rolled it out, did the communication and outreach, and now we have a process to follow.
Yeah, I was just suggesting more that I feel like we've completed the task, provided we continue to move forward. But I mean, maybe as long as we go ahead and move forward by the end of the fiscal year, we can check it off, I guess. Thank you.
Yes, and to clarify, these are status updates as of October 30th, so just wanted to share that.
Thank you. No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you through the mayor, and thank you, Denise, and everybody else who put this together. So I've got a number of questions here. Number one, in terms of policy number 3, establishing the policies to decarbonize existing buildings, and I see we're looking at a January study session. Will that study session include quantifying the cost to do it? Because a number of our community members have raised a lot of concerns about the cost.
We are actually looking at that, the quantification and having a larger conversation regarding the item.
Thank you. Okay, the next one, the design, and number 5, design and implement capital improvements for permanent street closures. About the B Street pedestrian mall. I know that we're doing a lot of things to try and not wait until the whole project is done, but the way this is written right here, it sounds like we're not going to do anything until spring, summer of next year.
So you have the larger permanent improvements, that's part of your Blue Skies task for our priority. And then as part of other direction that we received through a different council meeting, we were asked to do more immediate improvements. And so that's not part of the council priority that was identified at the Blue Skies meeting. So we are doing other things in the shorter, more immediate term that are not part of that item that's on your list.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure that we're going to keep going on that. Let's see. For number 7, the density minimums for mixed-use projects, what kind of timeline do you think we're looking at to get an update on that?
I think Zach may be online, and I know we're working on that, and he might have a better estimate on the date than I would.
Zach, are you available to speak?
Maybe we can just do we can come back to that, or we can get an update later on. It's just I think it's something important. Number 9, removing North Shoreview from the FEMA flood assessment. Does staff need anything else to ensure that this gets done? Do you have everything you need?
Good evening. We have submitted everything to FEMA. They submitted or returned back to us an additional data letter that requested some additional information. We've provided all of that, and so at this point, we're just waiting on FEMA. We did reach out to them through our consultant a week or 2 ago, and they said that they are reviewing everything, and so we're hopeful that at this point they have everything they need and that they can come back with a favorable decision quickly. But we're sort of at their mercy at this point, unfortunately.
Okay. thank you very much. Going on number 13, the implementation of a CRM system. I completely agree with the mayor about the importance and wondering if staff needs any support in order to be able to move this more quickly, or whether it's just such a complex project that it has to be done in a certain way.
So staff is working on a high-level work plan to work on over the next probably 12 to 18 months. We have to make sure that the organization is set up to take on a new CRM system. Failure to set up the systems in place properly and have a system that we have out to the public and cannot achieve success, that'd be an issue. So we have to set the entire system up, and I've asked our IT department to take the lead.
Great. Look forward to updates about that. Let's see then.
I have an update from Zach.
Oh, good.
He stepped away for a sec. He said that it's on track for for this fiscal year, and it'll be coming sometime in the new year.
Excellent. Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much. Let's see, number 19 is addressing the structural issues at the Marina Library. What caused the delay to, it says construction start moved to fall 2024. For item number 19, the structural issues at Marina Library. Hi again.
I'm not 100% sure. I know we had some challenges with getting all the different consultants on board because we have separate contracts with structural, geotech, civil, all these different firms. And so I know we had some challenges getting all those folks on board. Then there have been challenges in terms of figuring out what the appropriate approach is to structurally stabilizing the building. We were looking at two different options. I think that one was sort of a more costly approach that would do one approach, and one was a less costly. And so I think they've resolved which approach they think will work. And so I think it's just the process of getting everybody on board and then figuring out that process that's moved construction out to fall of 2024. But that's my understanding.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. And then finally, item number 30, the downtown grade separations. It says here that no new grant applications have been submitted at this time. Do we have sufficient grant writing and seeking support to be able to do what we need to do? Because this is obviously a critical item.
So I actually met just on this topic last week with the city's federal legislative consultant, where we're looking at the opportunities to apply for grants with a grade separation, or even asking for earmarks. And so we'll be working on that here in the near term. I've also been just looking at just organization-wide about the investment of having grant writing assistance and support. If we are going to be very aggressive in going after they call it OPM, other people's money, regarding grant dollars. And I have to just make sure that we have enough finances to match, because it's one thing to win the grants, but a lot of them come with local matches. And so we have to review our finances to make sure that we have that. But we'll be working on that.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, through the mayor. Sorry, during the conversation, I realized I had another question that would be potentially pertinent for this item. We just had an item in which we discussed voluntary expenditure limits and so on, and that was one of our priorities. And so, I feel like in the last meeting on that topic, we discussed public financing and options, and there appeared to me to be a council majority interested in shelving public financing options. But given that, would it be fair to say that there's a study session in our future, albeit the distant future, to review that? Or would I have to bring it up or something?
When we discussed this item, I knew that we weren't going to proceed with this upcoming year's election cycle. but I would suggest that you bring it up again at the next Blue Sky to have it on for the next cycle.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Councilmember Hedges.
A couple things. I wanted to go back to the North Shore View FEMA issue. It was my understanding that one of the pumps that we actually applied money to tonight was required for FEMA to let them out of the flood district. Is that correct, Matt?
Part of getting the folks in North Shore View out of that required us to put the upgrade the Poplar and Coyote pump stations. So that's separate than the Marina Lagoon pump station, but yes, that was required.
I thought there was one in there's one in North Shore View we're required to upgrade.
Yeah, there's the Coyote and Poplar that are on other sides of Coyote Point.
Yeah, so is that going to affect us in any way in timeline?
Those pump stations are upgraded, so we've done everything that FEMA has asked us to do on those.
Good, thank you. And one other issue, number 11, I actually discussed this with the city manager today. That's consider adoption of wage theft protection. And introduction of this usually falls on the lesser of us. It's usually hourly employees, and it comes in many different ways. As a union representative, I've experienced it, either pressuring people to work off the clock or not putting their premium or other times that are excessive. And the reason for that is often managers get bonuses based on their percentage of labor for the amount of sales. Even have one situation where I was involved in where a city council person called me as a union representative and told me of a place that had mostly immigrants working that weren't being given their tips that were done on credit cards. So it's important because the state is so inundated to have this. Now, there's a corollary to this. On the 12th of November, the county is going to vote on a wage ordinance. And I think there's 5 votes to approve it right now. So my question today is, should we contact, rather than rewriting the script for us, should we contact the county and see if we can piggyback with them? Should we explore their ordinance instead of having to write our own? But I think it's imperative that we move this forward based on what the county's doing. If we can use the county, it would really simplify things and the staff time we'd need as well. We may have to stifle them a little bit, but that would be easy to do, I think, because we'd have to expend money otherwise. Please, sir.
So regarding a wage theft ordinance, understand that the county's going to be bringing an ordinance forward. It'll be one opportunity to have an example of another agency actually implementing an ordinance. There's a couple other cities throughout the Bay Area who also have wage theft ordinances that we can actually look at and actually research as well. And that's something in local government we like to do research and development by looking at what our other localities are doing as well. And that's just another data point that we can take into consideration. We can also communicate, should the county move forward with their own ordinance of the new updated ordinance, but I haven't seen the details yet. And typically if the county's going to go ahead and approve such an ordinance, it would be for county unincorporated areas, which would be Broadmoor to the north, the coast side, and also North Fair Oaks in the south. But we can take a look at it.
Well, I was thinking like the sheriff's office actually becomes the police department for some of the cities through a contractual product that they put together. So I was thinking maybe, based on the council's feelings, whether we would do something like that with them, have them actually do it. We could have something on our website on the front of it that says, if you have a wage issue, click here.
Staff will go ahead, and I'll ask staff to look into it further, and then we can bring something back in the future.
Because this is really an equity issue. It affects the lowest paid people in our county usually.
And just to add to that, we do have a minimum wage mailer that we send out to all the businesses, and it includes a wage theft guidelines or just policies to look into or ways to help yourself if there's an issue that you're that you feel your wage is getting threatened. So we do have some information that we share, and it is on our website, and we do share it to the businesses. So, but we'll definitely have our economic development manager come forward to a city council study session to provide more like best recommendations or best practices from local jurisdictions.
So the lower paid people are often very frightened to come forward because they're one step away from being on the street. And so the state does allow people to go back 3 years. So they can file a wage claim when they leave too. So we should look into doing that.
Okay, thank you. So, moving on, this is just a review period, right? Okay. So should we open it up for public comment?
We have no public comment.
Okay, great. Well, we'll close public comment. And this is not something that requires a vote or a motion. Okay. So I want to say thank you so much for the update. I think it's really fruitful for our council and community to hear our questions and also get status updates on this. My feedback would be, it would be wonderful to see efforts that are related to our council priorities folded into the chart so that we're not trying to track conversations and actions that have been committed to in other formats and other meetings that are clearly associated with the council objectives, and then have them not be reflected in the progress updates. And so, I think that there's probably an opportunity for us to provide as much comprehensive update as we can through our matrix, so that we're all staying on the same page with updates. Any other comments? Okay, thank you so much, Denise. We appreciate your work. Okay, this is the time for our reports and announcements. Who would like to start? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, through the mayor. I have two. Number one, with regard to the large community engagement tonight on small cell towers, and I know there's going to be a session at the Sustainability Infrastructure Commission. That's great. It's a wonderful forum. I would request that that a review of the design standards associated with the small cell towers be brought up at the appropriate time or ask, because as I understand it, we're going to have to make some changes just because of changes in state law. So just to take another look at the design standards since they've been out for a couple of years and make sure that they really do accomplish if there are any amendments we need to make. So that's one. And then number two, given the fact it was brought up earlier tonight that we have a ballot measure out right now on the stormwater and flooding proposed fee. As I understand it, the city has historically not voted on ballot measures, and I think this would be a topic that would be an interesting one to bring up to council, to get the council's opinion and whomever as to whether the city should be voting on this, because it's a major issue for us as well, and we would be paying it, but it also is important to the city. So those would be my two requests. Thank you.
Any thoughts on what the deputy mayor has raised?
I would be in favor of both, with the towers as well as the city voting on the stormwater fee. I think it's, for instance, safety. I think it's incumbent on us to act in a way that we can preserve life, because we did lose one, not only in preserve property. So I would like to see the city voting in the affirmative on this.
I would concur with my fellow council members.
I would also agree. The only request I asked, which I didn't follow up with you, Alex, was do we have any idea what that represents in terms of how many votes or how many properties would be?
175. At least.
Yes, 175?
So I haven't taken a look at that detail yet, but we can look at that and then bring an item forward November 20th, but I see our Deputy Public Works Director might have an answer.
I think that the city may own 175 parcels, but I think some of those may not be subject to the fee based on them being vacant or things like that. So I think there's 98 parcels that the city owns that would be subject to the fee. So there would be 98 votes potentially.
Thank you.
If we could just confirm that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so based off of, I'm seeing a majority for staff to bring back an item on November 20th for discussion regarding this item about the storm ballot measure.
Yes.
And then I saw just two, I just heard from two just on the cell phone item.
I would
Or
support.
cell towers, not cell phone.
I heard a majority,
Majority, okay. That was kind of to both, okay.
but I guess our standard process would be to go through SIC first, right? So that's what's happening, and so, we would continue on that path, correct?
So that would be correct, but the meeting that's happening on December 13th is specifically for the appeal hearings to educate and inform our SNI committee members and also take in the public comment of what we've heard and have our experts speak to it. We'd have to bring another item in the future. We have probably in 2024 because there's new state law about batching the permits that we'll have to bring forward. And I would think that we would do it under that. We'd also could have a discussion about just the aesthetics piece and any other regulations that are within our purview.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other announcements or reports? Okay, Councilmember Hedges.
It's been a lovely week with 3 great grandbabies. It was a great deal of fun.
Okay, we have council, no? Okay, we're good. Thank you so much and good night.